It would probably help if I unmuted my mic. Hello, how are you? Happy Father's Day to those out there who celebrate, which is presumably most of you. Uh, I myself and my husband are both members of the Dead Dads Club. So Father's Day is not a big holiday around here. And so I was sitting around thinking um, how much I hope that the jury comes back with a fucking verdict tomorrow. And I figured I got some pretty good feedback on my last 2.5 hour Karen Reed podcast. So I thought, I don't know, why not go live and we can watch closing arguments? Obviously, a lot of us have seen them. I've watched them like a quadrillion times. But there are a good number of you, at least in the TDC realm, that probably maybe haven't heard it. And actually, I don't know to what extent any of you have really even heard either of these attorneys talk. I know I've mentioned how I would love to hire Alan Jackson if I ever commit a crime. And I've also referred to Hank Brennan as like a rat fuck. So I figured it would give you a good look into why I feel that way. I think that you're going to get that vibe too. So I'm going to play it at 1.5 times speed because otherwise they're each like an hour and a half long. So we'd be here forever and a day. So I'm going to play it at 1.5 speed. But I will say, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but I re listened to my episode that I did a couple days ago, the day before closing arguments. And then when I listened to closing arguments, I was like, that is literally everything I fucking covered in the episode. It's kind of crazy. So just also keep in mind the Commonwealth nor the defense called Michael Proctor, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, so Matthew McCabe. So all of the information that I told you about those individuals, um, for example, that they both got rid of their cell phones, and one Brian Higgins got rid of it on an army base. None of that information can come in this trial because those people didn't testify. So just keep that in mind because you're probably, I guess if I didn't mention that, you'd be like, why didn't he mention that in his closing argument? It's kind of a big deal. So you will see, honestly, like Alan Jackson makes me want to commit a crime. And I'm not saying I'm going to, but I kind of want to. He's such a good attorney. It's crazy. Like, it's for real crazy. Okay, let's just start it. So, again, I'm watching it on 1.5 speed. So, I don't know, fucking relax about it. If you don't like it, too bad. So, in Massachusetts, the defense goes first, Commonwealth goes second, which is so fucking weird to me, but whatever. Okay, here is Alan Jackson, defense attorney. The people to his left are Karen's family and friends, and then the people behind him and behind the other guy in the tie, like that bald guy and those people back there, that's John's family. You'll kind of see them as the camera pans. So this is the start of Alan Jackson's argument.
I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your diligence. This is not an easy undertaking. Most of all, I want to thank you for your courage, because courage is what this moment demands. Not just to listen, but to stare directly at injustice and say, not here, not now, not on our watch. That's what you're being asked to do. Stare down injustice. I want to start with a simple truth. You folks, not us, nobody else in the courtroom, you folks are the last line of defense. The last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her. That falsely accused her, that tried mightily to bury the truth. This case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by biases and conflicts and personal loyalties that you heard about. And most fatally, it was corrupted by a lead investigator whose misconduct infected every single part of this case, from the top to the bottom.
That fucker.
In our opening comments to you a few weeks ago, we told you what to watch for. We warned you what to watch for. We begged you what to watch for. Watch for the physical evidence. Pay attention to the medical facts. Pay attention to the science and the physics. But also pay attention to the integrity, the very essence, the integrity of the investigation. But you also saw something during the course of the trial that none of us might have expected, something that should sadden us, something that maybe would anger us. On full display, you saw the lengths to which some police officers will go to protect their own, at the expense of the rest of us, at the expense of Karen Reed, an innocent woman. Before we examine the evidence in the case, which we will do, we need to understand the very foundation of the entire system of justice in which we operate. It's the bedrock on which this entire system is built. Reasonable doubt. This isn't just a technicality, it's not a slogan. It's a constitutional shield that protects the innocent and prevents the government from punishing without proof. The Commonwealth has the high burden to prove every—
Okay, you guys. The first few times I watched this part where they zoomed in on Karen's face made me so emotional. I just thought, imagine how fucking nervous she must be. I mean, seriously, this is your second murder trial. You're what all you can do at this point. You just have to sit there and listen to this very handsome fellow give the closing argument of a lifetime, but still, like, she's helpless. She's helpless right now. She's just sitting there, like, at the end of the day, she could ultimately be in jail, right? I mean, I truly don't think that's going to happen, but imagine how sick she must feel. Oh my God. I just feel so bad for her. Okay.
every single element of every single charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to moral certainty. As I said, those powerful words are not just some legal jargon. They're your mandate, they're your obligation, they're your community's protection against injustice. In our system of justice, Karen Read sits here today presumed innocent, cloaked in the presumption of innocence. That presumption is not fragile. It doesn't just disappear because there's a charge or a badge or a theory. That presumption stands firm unless and until the Commonwealth clears that high bar, the highest bar the law provides, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. That means at the end of this case, at the end of the trial, you think about one or more of the charges, you think, you know what, maybe that's true. It might be true.
Also, if I'm on trial for murder or anything for that matter, do not fucking zoom in on me. Do not zoom in on me. So rude.
Then you vote not guilty. If you think it's possibly true or probably true, your vote must be not guilty. If someone among you thinks it's likely true or even very likely to be true, your vote is not guilty. Because none of those standards, maybe, might be, possibly, probably, likely, very likely, none of those meets the extraordinary burden of beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. A moral certainty means a level of confidence so strong, so incredibly unshakable, that you would go home, look your loved ones in the eye and say, I am certain. Not probably, not likely. I'm morally certain, and my certainty remains unshakable. The law defines moral certainty as the highest level of certainty known in all human affairs. Think about that. You must be that certain about the entirety, not part of, the entirety of the Commonwealth's case. As we discuss this case, you'll see that the Commonwealth comes nowhere near, nowhere close.
And when he said all of that, I was thinking, if you're a juror, okay, and you vote guilty for the rest of your life, you're going to have people coming up to you who knew you were on that jury going, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And you're going to have to explain why you overlooked every single one of those items of reasonable doubt and that you close your eyes at night confident that the woman that's behind bars is 100% guilty. It's impossible. It's impossible because everyone would be like, well, wait a second. What about the dog bites on the arm? What'd you feel about that? You'd have to say, yeah, well, we just, we ignored that. Okay, well, what about the fact that he didn't have any injuries? What about the fact that every single medical professional that was put on the stand said that did not look like he was in a car accident? You'd have to explain how you came every single one of those, and that's insane. You wouldn't be able to. So, and also it's really good, I think, that he did this. This is kind of like the more boring part of the closing. Trust me, we're getting somewhere. But he didn't do this in the last closing argument. The last closing argument, it was really good, but it was a story. And it didn't explain what their purpose was, like what the burden is, that it's a beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, these are just normal people who presumably don't psychotically watch trials like I do, who know those types of things. And so you have to explain it to them. Otherwise, they're going to be sitting there thinking they have to figure it out. It's not on you to figure it out. It's on the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and in Massachusetts, to a moral certainty, that Karen Read hit John with her car and caused him to die. So also, Francis J. Fox says 2 watching and 1 like, real barn burner. I appreciate that feedback, Francis. However, we do have 122 people watching. 123 now, including my ex account. So thank you so much for that feedback. But hey, if you are watching, give it a like. Mike and I sure appreciate it. Okay, back to this.
to reaching that extreme burden of proof. Ladies and gentlemen, on January 28, 2022, it was a Friday night. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed made plans to meet up with friends, go out for drinks. You saw through video evidence and eyewitnesses they were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits throughout that evening. They started off at C.F. McCarthy's, which you've heard about, eventually made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill. When they got there, the Albert family, they were already there, and they were already drinking. The Albert family, it's been established as a very well-known family in Kenton. They've got quite the reputation. Brian Albert was at the Waterfall, a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there. She was with him. His brother, Chris Albert, who was a Canton board selectman, he was there. His wife, Julie Albert, their daughter, Caitlin, and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, whom you met, and her husband,
that
Matthew
bitch,
McCabe, whom you did not meet. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. But also present at the Waterfall that night was Brian Albert's friend, Brian Higgins.
Big
You
neck
know that
Daddy
he had a
Higgins.
romantic design on Karen? That becomes an incredibly important fact as we discuss the facts of this case. As the bar was closing around midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house. They wanted to keep the night going. But the evidence revealed something interesting, that the invitation to John O'Keefe appears to have been for a different reason, an alternate reason. Think about the video of Brian Higgins and what Michael Proctor in his investigation completely and utterly ignored. Higgins was agitated after a day of drinking, agitated that it was John and not Karen, John with Karen, not him. Recall that ominous text that he sent to Karen with her and John standing just feet away. Well? He got no response. And then we see this.
Can't really see it that great in this video, but this is the video of John
That's what Brian
kissing
Higgins was
Karen
confronted
on
with
her
following
forehead.
his,
And
text.
John's like looking right
What of
at
all
it.
things starts going through Brian Higgins'
Brian.
mind? Where does his mind go? What is he thinking about after seeing this, after witnessing this? He shows you. And if Michael Proctor had been the least bit interested, this video would have shown him too. Take a look.
So this is Brian Higgins on the right and Brian Albert, the homeowner, on the left. And they're like fighting, like play fighting. To me, it looks like they're peacocking, which I can totally see that, right? Like, oh, she's ignoring me, so I'm going to pretend like I'm this big tough guy. That's exactly what's happening here. And it's not shown in this closing argument, but you also see like Brian Higgins kept pulling Brian Albert to the side away from everybody else, like talk to him one-on-one. It was weird. Jeff Williams says all the evidence still points to the defendant. Yeah, okay, Jeff. Back to this. More fighting. And Brian Albert is like, looks
Sparring.
like he's giving Brian
Practicing.
Higgins the
techniques.
Heimlich.
Where is Brian Higgins' mind?
And it's
What is he
paused on
thinking
the
about?
screen for like a
And
really
then what
long time,
happens?
which is
Before you look at the next
hilarious.
video, think about what you're going to see. This next video is after he sees John kiss Karen on the forehead, after he sends that aggressive text to Karen with her standing just feet away. Watch closely, and this is what you're going to see. This is what Michael Proctor in his investigation completely ignored. Higgins is very clearly upset. He's
Look at
agitated.
this
Chris
pause.
Albert tries to control him, tries to talk to him, calm him down perhaps. Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. You'll see that in the video that you're about to watch. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. Brian Albert's standing right there with the other two men, but Brian Higgins is having none of it. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only, John O'Keefe. In an instant, Higgins angrily jerks his arm away from Chris. Higgins rubs his brow, and he directly gestures at John. A gesture that looks a lot like, let's step outside. Let's go outside.
That is sure what it looks
John looks
like.
at him, takes a swig of beer, completely ignores him. Take a look.
This is the video I played for you guys, and they're showing the side-by-side of Brian gesturing to him and John like paying the bill and looking at him. Yeah, John's like, yeah, okay, you fucking big neck loser.
Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in this case, had all this footage, but he did nothing. He had access to the exact same thing that you saw. Why did he do nothing? A few minutes later,
Because he didn't give a
Higgins then
fuck.
texts John directly. You coming here? 3 question marks. It's now 12.
3 question marks is
These guys
aggressive.
are not good friends. They barely spoke or even acknowledged each other when they walked into the bar together, other than a quick greeting. So why was Higgins coaxing John over to 34 Fairview? You coming here after this? And why not text Karen? Because at that moment, he wasn't interested in Karen. He was interested in John O'Keefe. This
As
is about 5 minutes
evidenced
before
by the
John gets out of
Heimlich
SUV and walks
position.
toward the house. About 5 minutes before Karen sees him alive for the last time. So what happened inside that house, or that basement, or that garage? What evidence was there for the investigators to look into? What did they ignore? Laceration over John's
Everything.
right eyelid, black eyes, a large dog at the home, an obvious dog bite on John O'Keefe's right arm, a head injury from falling backward onto a hard surface, alleged surface. a text from Higgins, one of the last people to ever communicate with John O'Keefe. You come in here? Those words now echo in the wake of John's death. But Michael Proctor, he didn't listen.
No, he didn't.
When John
And that's the thing, like, okay, maybe it wasn't Big Neck Daddy Higgins. Maybe it wasn't. But Proctor sure as fuck didn't want to look into it. That's for sure. And Jeff Williams, I don't know if you're here trolling. He says speculation. Guess what? It's not their burden to prove anything. They literally don't have to prove a thing. So if there's still speculation left, that's reasonable doubt. So yeah. Okay, cool. And as to the evidence on the scene, just like the accident reconstructionist who, built a new seat for our troops overseas, he's good enough to do that. I know you don't think he's good enough to reconstruct Karen Read's accident. He's only good enough for the military and for the NHL. When it comes to reconstructing car accidents, he's not the best. But if you were to give him any credit whatsoever, because, maybe he saved the life of a soldier, so he just give him maybe just a little bit of credit. He says, if you can't prove there was an accident, everything else, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter because an accident didn't happen and they can't prove it. Fucking Hank Brennan said that himself. So yeah, Jeff, nice try though. Jeff is probably Trooper Proctor's alt account.
Very oblivious to what had happened, thinking she was just left alone in the car out in the cold in the middle of the night. She got frustrated and she drove home. She arrived back at home and her Wi-Fi connected to her phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. It's an important time, 12:36 a.m. She left John voicemail after voicemail after voicemail.
It is an important time, but he doesn't exactly marry it back as to why it's an important time. It's important. Hopefully the jurors remember, but it's important because the Commonwealth is alleging that at 12:32, Karen hit John and then had to drive. It's 6 minutes in good conditions and it was snowing. So 8-minute drive back to Don's. She connected to John's 4 minutes later. So that is a very important time, but he doesn't really connect the two, which is unfortunate, but hopefully the jurors remember.
He was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. Her voicemails reflect that frustration after the fact. That's the frustration that you hear in her angry voicemails. She uses harsh words, foul language. She's obviously upset. She's obviously irritated because he didn't come back out of the house.
Yeah.
He wasn't responding. But Karen did not know what you know. She didn't know what the investigators should have known. She didn't know what was happening with Higgins and Albert and with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. When he didn't come home at about 5 a.m., Karen went looking for him in a panic. As you know, her worst fears were realized when she found John beaten, battered, bloody, and left in the snow in Brian Albert's front lawn. At 6 a.m. when Karen found John, you heard about the scene. It was described in detail. It was chaos. To use Mr. Brennan's word in his opening statement, it was bedlam. The screams for help by Karen, the yelling and the hollering, ambulances, emergency lights, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol officers, all of them swarming all over the lawn just under Brian Albert's bedroom window. And of course, as you learned during the course of this trial, Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder trained in being a first responder, never came out of the house. Never went outside to help a fallen fellow officer who was laying on his own property. Never came out.
So fucked up.
We learned through the undisputed evidence that the lead investigator might.
He also didn't offer up his house as like a command post for all the cops who were outside, which is insane to me. Also, they never secured the crime scene, which this is so wild. Like the fact that they didn't even treat this like a crime scene when it was a dead cop it's such bullshit. John deserves so much better. But I mean, after they picked up John's body, they were like, oh, okay, we're done here. Because obviously they didn't think it was a murder. Duh. But, Brian Albert wasn't even like, hey, while you guys, maintain the crime scene all day long, I'll make you coffee. I'll make you hot chocolate. You can keep your stuff in here. You can come in here to go to the bathroom. He didn't do any of that. Like, what a fucking sociopath.
Michael Proctor, for his part, never went into the house. The Commonwealth has struggled to try to prove that John O'Keefe ended up in Brian Albert's front lawn because he was struck by a vehicle. They have failed. They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because the science does not lie, the medical evidence does not lie, the physics do not lie. Their investigation was flawed from the start because their investigator was corrupted from the start by bias, personal loyalties. Folks, they cannot prove a collision. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision. So let's start there. I want to take a minute to discuss the actual science, the actual physics, and the actual medical evidence that's
Talk
presented
to
in
me.
this case. The science, it's an old saying, is known as the silent witness. It doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and notably, it doesn't take sides. If there was no collision, what are we doing here?
Great question.
In order for there to be a collision, there has to have been an impact site. The vehicle had to have struck John, period. I want to remind you of some of the most important testimony in the entire case, and it comes from the Commonwealth's own medical expert, Dr. Irini Scorbello, the Commonwealth's medical examiner, someone governed by law to make these decisions. We know that a person struck by a vehicle suffers massive trauma, broken bones, fractures, soft tissue damage, torn ligaments, contusions, soft tissue injury, severe tissue injury, crushing blows. None of that was present with John. None of it. Not anywhere on his body, including his right arm. Not one bruise.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing.
The fact is, the injuries are not from a vehicle impact. Not his head injury, not those scratch and bite wounds.
Nope.
Not a single medical expert, think about this, not a single medical expert called by the defense or called by the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car. Not one. Think about the irony. Not one. That's not just significant. It's literally the most important point in the entire trial. Listen again to Dr. Scorbello.
That's so true. Like, literally, not one single medical expert that they brought to the stand testified that it was a motor vehicle accident. Why are we even having a trial? Like, what in the fuck is going on? Jeff says the Lexus box recorded a high vehicle rate of speed. Cool. Is she charged with going at a high rate of speed in reverse? Last time I fucking checked, that wasn't on the verdict slip, you dipshit. So unless you can tie her going in a high rate of speed to hitting John, to a collision, fuck out of here with your fucking bullshit. Because you didn't prove jack shit. Cool, you proved she went fast in reverse. Okay. Issue her fucking speeding citation. Impeding traffic. You don't charge the bitch with murder for going fast in reverse. So don't talk to me about the data doesn't lie. Until you can prove that there was a collision, it's not guilty. Dumb fuck.
Those words. Question. You did not include in your autopsy, in any fashion, any discussion of whether Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a motor vehicle accident. Did you? Answer. No, I did not.
That's
She
the
told you,
Commonwealth's
quote,
medical
I did
examiner.
not see any evidence of an impact site. End quote. She was talking about John's body.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth's own medical examiner, Dr. Scorbello, performed the autopsy.
And then
She
the
didn't-
dipshits like Jeff will be like, oh, but they didn't do an MRI. No, Jeff, they didn't. But guess what Dr. Scorbello did? She cut him open and pulled his skin back and actually looked at the muscles. It's even better than an MRI. And no fucking injuries. None. No impact site. So yeah, Jeff, you proved that she drove fast in reverse. Congratulations. None of the science agrees with you that she hit him. None of it. Including the person that examined his body.
Personally, she's the only one to have personally examined John's body, and she found no evidence of an impact site on his entire body. That in and of itself is reasonable doubt. You don't need anything more. The Commonwealth's case is done. It's cooked. Their own experts said there is no evidence of a collision, no evidence of an impact. If you want to know what an impact looks like, take a look at this. This is what a body looks like after being struck by a car at 25 miles an hour.
I wish they were showing this, but in Judd the Chud, which was the Commonwealth's expert, in his PowerPoint, he put in pictures of another accident that he worked on where the person got hit by a car going 25 miles an hour. And it is like, yeah, yup. Thank you, Judd. Thank you. That is exactly what we would think a body would look like getting hit 25 miles an hour. Thank you so much for proving our point. The guy is like tore up from head to fucking toe. He's got road rash all over his body. He's got broken bones. The car is smashed to shit. And he's dead, by the way. So like, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Judd. Thank you for providing us with exactly what we would expect to see in a car accident, which is what we don't see in this case. So Alan Jackson added that slide of Judd the Chuds into his closing argument, which is fucking hilarious.
Looks like after hitting a person at 25 miles an hour. These are exhibits from Dr. Welcher, the Commonwealth's expert.
Judd.
John didn't even have a bruise.
Nope.
Make no mistake, Dr. Scorbello was presented with the Commonwealth's theory of the case, the same case that you've been presented with, and she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide. She flatly refused to conclude that there was a collision. And you know who agrees with that? That silent witness. The science, the physics, the data.
Not Jeff, though.
Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rinchler, you just met them recently. They explained they were not initially hired by the defense. They were asked by another agency to conduct their analysis. They looked at the evidence from both sides, not taking a side for the defense or the Commonwealth, completely independent. They looked at the damage to the SUV on the one side of the coin. They looked at the injuries to John O'Keefe on the other side of the coin. Both PhDs, both engineers determined there was no collision. I'm not saying it. The science says it. That SUV's taillight was not damaged by striking an arm, and John was not struck by a 6,000-pound SUV. Period. Full stop. Dr. Dan Wolf did the testing on the taillight. Actual testing, not some ridiculous blue paint kindergarten project. He did lab testing. He did field testing. He did data testing. Actual impact force analyses. In every single test, at every single...
They're going to show a picture of it, but the Commonwealth's accident reconstructionist that just ran himself into the taillight at 2 miles an hour with blue paint, the fact that he just called it a kindergarten project is so fucking funny. And also, I would have paid an unlimited amount of money to see the ARCA experts, the ones the feds hired, for the first time watching the blue paint experiment. Literally I wish someone would have had the forethought to suggest that they record their reactions, because they could literally auction it off for like millions of dollars, and we would crowd fund it, because I can only imagine their reactions. They were probably like, what in the fuck is this shit? They are going to be shoving Judd the Chud into lockers at their next little nerd meeting that they have, wherever that is being held.
Speed. The taillight damage was inconsistent with striking an arm. In every test, the taillight damage was inconsistent with damaging the shirt, the sweatshirt. Remember that severe internal damage to Karen Reed's taillight. Not just the outer lens. The internal diffusers were completely smashed, completely shattered. ARCA testing established that all the internal components of every single test taillight, especially the diffusers, remained completely intact. Conversely, on Karen's taillight, the diffusers were almost completely gone.
Yeah.
Folks, understand something. If any part of that diffuser portion of the taillight was broken, there is no light. It doesn't illuminate at all. It's just black. Let's take a look at a couple of photos. At 5:07 a.m. at One Meadows, that's the photograph on the left.
That doesn't look like a
bright taillight.
Blacked out taillight to me.
Later, at 4:12 in the afternoon.
Look at that, you guys. Look at that. They want you to believe that those taillights that you're looking at are missing 47 fucking pieces. How offensive. How fucking offensive. And one of the pieces is the one that lights up the light. So if that were gone, and why is the light lighting up then? Explain it to me like I'm 5, Jeff. Okay. And also at the 412, this is the one when the car is being picked up. And you see this white part right here. That is the part that the Dighton police officer, who has no connection to Michael Proctor or anybody, said that was the part that he saw that was missing. The rest of it was intact. What the fuck reason does he have to lie?
It's lit up. How can that be? How can that be if the Commonwealth claims that those diffusers, the portion that lights up the light, were already scattered all over 34 Fairview? That's their theory. But don't believe your lying eyes. The taillight's completely lit up. That would be impossible. Dr. Andrew Rinchler, a PhD, a biomechanist, explained that at those speeds, the other side of that coin, John's arm would be basically destroyed. Contusions, swelling, torn ligaments, hyperextensions, dislocation of joints, and bones, fractured, broken, and shattered. But as you know, John's arm was pristine, save those dog and claw bites. He didn't even have a bruise. Think about this. Think about that photo of those x-rays as you deliberate.
Showing a picture of his x-rayed arms.
That's not that hard. You can't manipulate a bruise. If they claim the car was going fast enough to shatter the taillight and shatter the diffusers, it was also going...
Perfectly intact arm that Jeff's dumbass thinks was hit by a 6,000-pound vehicle. Sure, Jan.
Fast enough to destroy and shatter John's arm, and it simply did not. How do they square that? They don't, and they can't. So they spent nearly $400,000 of taxpayer money to hire someone to dress up and look like John and paint his arm blue, which told you exactly nothing. The ARCA testing
I bet he sleeps in those
also
clothes.
established that it is impossible for John's sweatshirt sleeve to be damaged by an impact with the taillight. The Commonwealth's theory is that the sleeve of John's hoodie sweatshirt was damaged by flying shards of taillight slicing through the shirt and through John's arm. I have 3 questions. Number 1.
Talk to me.
John's arm had about 36 abrasions. How did 36 shards of acrylic go through 9 tiny little puncture holes? How'd that happen? Somebody needs to answer that.
4 each, I guess.
Number 2, why are there no slices or cuts in the hoodie? All the defects are punctures. Punctures that you might get from, say, I don't know, canine teeth.
Well, that's common.
And number 3, if the shards cut bloody gouges into John's arm, that's their theory.
Yeah.
Why is there no blood, no skin, no tissue on a single shard of taillight that they claim came in contact with John's arm?
Now you're just making too much
one of those
sense.
questions because John's arm was not impacted by the taillight. It doesn't make sense simply because it didn't happen.
Exactly. I could, if I were on this jury, I'd be sitting there going, yes, preach. I'd be snapping. Judge Cannoni would have given me the boot. I would have been told I couldn't wear these pink glasses. Oh, Jeff says it didn't shatter his arm. He bounced off it. Is he Gumby? Is John O'Keefe Gumby? What the fuck do you mean he bounced off of it? Is he a bouncy ball? Jeff, you're insane.
And contrast the ARCA experts and their actual testing to Judd Welcher. He came to you in the Commonwealth's case in chief, and he told you that for the better part of $500,000, he'd come in and testify that John was tall enough to touch the taillight with his elbow. That's it. And even in that basic demonstration, he had to lean in to manipulate it, to get the results that he wanted.
Yeah, it's so embarrassing.
Dr. Welcher then claimed the reason he didn't do the reconstruction, the actual testing, think about what he said. There isn't enough evidence to determine what happened. I beg your pardon? What happens when there isn't enough evidence, in his words? You vote not guilty.
Duh.
That's what happens. That's out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Not mine.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth also used the same company, Aperture, to try to establish a time of a collision that never occurred. The Commonwealth called Shannon Burgess, the supposed expert from Aperture.
Man, Shannon.
There is a cardinal sin for experts, folks. A cardinal sin. It's called confirmation bias. It's when you decide to change your opinion to fit a theory. The most important takeaway from Shannon Burgess' testimony was how brazen, how shameless he was in trying to change the data to try to suit the Commonwealth.
And lie about his education.
Remember Mr. Brennan's opening statement. He made some promises to you. He said, this case is about the data. He stressed it over and over again.
Sure did.
We had 3.5 years.
And I didn't play the opening statements, but Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, sure as fuck did say that. He's like, we have the science and the data on our side. When I play some of his closing argument, and I'm not going to play the whole thing because it honestly, like, it's so bad, but whatever. He doesn't talk about any of the data and the science. Jeff got the talking points from Hank. He talks about that she went in reverse. But that's about it. Other than that, he talks about her own statements that she made on a documentary. If she didn't do those documentaries, I don't know what in the fuck Hank Brennan would have talked about in his closing argument. Because he sure as shit doesn't talk about science or data. That's for damn sure.
To get this right. The Commonwealth has had this case for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
To get it right.
Yeah.
So his top expert, Dr. Welcher, prepares a report. And that report says that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's SUV at 12:31:38. Note that time. 12:31:38. He was struck, he was immediately incapacitated, he was immediately unconscious. So says Judd Welcher and the Commonwealth's theory. But there was a huge, huge problem with that. And somewhere in the middle of trial, somebody must have realized it. They must have realized that the very data they produced unequivocally establishes that they are wrong about a collision. It could not have happened. Why? Because John was interacting with his phone after 12:31:38. Remember, the collision, immediately incapacitating. How could he be interacting with his phone afterward? He was on his phone, opening his phone, checking his phone, reading texts on his phone, and locking his phone, all of it, after 12:31:38, which is the time Welcher clocked for the moment of the impact. And he was taking steps and walking with that phone after 12:31:38 also. That's what their own data showed, and it devastated their case.
Yeah.
And it devastated that false theory.
Yeah.
There must
Data
be
doesn't lie, as
what do we
Jeff
do now?
says.
The data shows John wasn't struck by the car. What do we do? Enter Shannon Burgess.
Man, Shannon.
Question. Can you believe him?
Oof.
Can you believe Mr. Burgess? He came up with a brand new story right in the middle of trial.
Yeah, he did.
You might ask yourself, would an expert actually say something he knows not to be true? Would an expert actually say something he knows is not supported by fact? Would an expert shade the truth? You don't have to look any further than Shannon Burgess's CV to answer that question. That was a shame. Even with the pull and push and stretch and manipulation of the time data that Mr. Burgess came in here and told you about, it still shows that John O'Keefe was very much alive and walking around after they claimed he was hit and incapacitated. Think about that. Matt DeSogra looked at Burgess's report and told you that in 30 out of 30 scenarios of the possible time skews that Shannon Burgess identified, he came in the middle of trial and identified.
Jeff says the phone went dead, which it didn't. He stopped using it at 12:32. Don't leave off other details, please. Oh, I'm not leaving off any details. You have zero proof of a collision. That's the thing. You have zero fucking proof. You don't know what time they got there. You don't know what time he went in the house. You don't know if he dropped his phone outside. You don't know what the fuck happened. You literally don't know, and you can't prove a collision happened. So for you to say, yeah, well, at the right after she maybe kind of went in reverse, we don't know how fast though, and when John stopped using his phone is kind of, if we skew the time and change the reports in the middle of trial, we can kind of sort of maybe get it to line up, but like, just trust me, bro, is not good enough. Not fucking good enough, my guy. So I'm not leaving off any fucking facts. Your facts they're stupid.
Like all these other time skews that he called it. In every single scenario, John was alive and walking after they said he was hit. And that's a problem for them.
Yeah, it is.
Because there was no collision.
Correct.
Just look at Mr. Whiffen's data, Ian Whiffen. John O'Keefe took 31 steps at a steady rate, about 83 feet, and then think about this, in a westerly direction. That would be right toward the house.
Oh!
78 feet to the garage door.
Data doesn't lie, Jeff. Data doesn't lie. So after he bounced off the car, explain this to me, Jeff. After he bounces off the car like Gumby, he takes 83 steps around, opens his phone, reads a text from Jen McCabe, puts his phone on the ground because it's under his shoulder when he's found, and then he just falls back like a tree after he took 84 steps. Is that what happened, Jeff? Okay, cool.
That's not a coincidence. The Commonwealth's witnesses, or the Commonwealth's witness, Mr. Ian Whiffen himself conceded that he has reasonable doubts about the accuracy of John's location data. Remember that question and answer on cross-examination by Mr. Leslie? Do you have doubts? I do. Are those doubts reasonable? They are. And remember, it's still the Commonwealth's burden.
Yeah.
If their own cell phone expert has a reasonable doubt about John's location, so should you. John O'Keefe was inside.
And that's the thing, what all these dumb fucks like Jeff say. Oh, it didn't move from the front lawn. When you look at the circles, the whole circle is around the whole house of 34 Fairview. The whole fucking house is encased in the circle. The phone can literally be anywhere in any of those circles. That's what Ian Whiffen said. So for you to make this like assumption that it was on the front lawn and didn't move is factually incorrect. It could have been anywhere in those circles. That's what Ian Whiffen said. And when Alan Jackson says that Mr. Bob Alessi said, do you have doubts about where his phone was? Because Ian Whiffen was trying to say, yeah, it's probably on the lawn. But then he got him to admit, well, it can actually be in any of those circles. And Bob Alessi said, so do you have doubts about where his phone is? He says, yeah. He says, are those doubts reasonable? AKA reasonable doubt. And he said, yes. So again, they like to say they've got data, but not so much.
And the phone battery temperature further proves it. This
I'd be
is
such
not
a good
speculation.
foreperson.
This is science, and it's irrefutable. It tells us that he was not laying outside in the cold. He was inside somewhere a little bit warmer. Ian Whiffen told you that when the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, think about these numbers. When the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, it will drop from 81 to 21 degrees in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's a 60-degree drop in 15 minutes. Now look at John's phone. It was laying, according to the Commonwealth, it was laying directly on frozen ground.
Correct.
He arrived at 34 Fairview,
in the snow.
And his phone dropped only 20 degrees over the course of an hour. Then inexplicably, it stayed steady, never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5 hours.
And also, I reckon that your phone cools off when you're not using it. Because I know when I'm like really hardcore using my phone is burning up. But when I'm not, it's just chilling there. I reckon the battery temp goes down. And if you've ever been in the cold, like the legit cold, like you've been skiing or snowboarding or, you've been ice skating and you have your phone, it dies so fast in the cold. Like seriously, it dies so fast. It's annoying. So to think that his phone was just sitting outside in the cold, tucked neatly under his shoulder. How did it get under his shoulder? How'd that happen, Jeff? And if you say it just did, like Trooper Paul,
hours, never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5 hours, basically through the entire night. He was not outside. He was someplace warmer, like a basement or a garage.
Yep.
Dr. LaPosada confirmed that John Keefe did not have hypothermia. No telltale signs, no telltale Wisniewski spots, no frostbite on any extremity. He
No
did not die of
frostbite.
hypothermia because he wasn't outside.
No frostbite.
Dr. Isaac Wolf, Dan Wolf, Elizabeth LaPosada, Jensen Welcher, Andrew Rinchler, all agreed. Every expert agreed. This is how John O'Keefe died. A rearward fall from a standing position.
This is the Commonwealth's own test.
What could make you fall straight back like that?
Yeah.
Let's just think about that
I
for a
don't
second.
know.
What can make you fall from a standing position, as Doug Welcher just
Bouncing
showed,
off a
standing
car,
up, falling
apparently,
straight back.
according to Jeff.
Add a laceration to the right eye consistent with a fist or a punch, and you've got your answer.
Yeah, Jeff, where'd that cut
Certainly
on
didn't
his
sustain
eye
that wound
come
on the back of
from
his head by
when he
falling
was
backwards onto a
bouncing?
lawn. Dr. LaPosada told you that the patterned injury on the back of John's head could only be produced by hitting a hard, ridged, or ledged surface, like a concrete stair or step. What's just through that garage door? Michael Proctor never sat down in that garage to find out. What a shame. And look at the arm. Just look at John's arm. You don't need the top experts in the country, but you had them. You don't need the top medical minds on the planet on this issue, but you had them. These are dog bites and scratches.
Look at this arm.
These are animal wounds. Not one.
Look at this fucking arm. I have to think that John O'Keefe, God rest his soul, and happy Father's Day, is watching down from heaven, wondering how in the fuck he surrounded himself with such morons as friends and family that they looked at these marks on his arm and thought they came from his girlfriend's 6,000-pound vehicle. How stupid must you be to think that? Jeff will have you believe that John is Gumby and bounced. John bounced off of Karen's car, and while bouncing, apparently, left these bites on his arm. Okay, Jeff.
Witness has been called in their trial. Not one. 8 weeks and counting. Not one witness who actually disputes that John O'Keefe's arm injuries are from a dog. The Commonwealth could not find a single medical expert, a single medical witness who would
They should have called
come in here and
Jeff.
tell you those are inconsistent with a dog bite or a scratch. And it's equally clear that there was no collision. Dr. LaPosada told you in probably the clearest voice.
So
in the
you could
entire
kind of
trial.
see it there, but with every point that Alan Jackson's talking about, like the whole screen are these note cards, and whenever he talks about something, like the note card zooms up and it'll be like there was no collision, or the damage doesn't match the theory, like whatever it might be, or Brian Higgins. So they're bringing it up on a note card, and then Alan Jackson eventually says at the end, like, if even one of these cards stays with you in your mind when you go back there, it's a not guilty. So it's like all these reasonable doubt cards. White Paint says, I respect no one that thinks he was hit by a car. Same. Fucking same. Literally same. If you tell me you think that those are from a car, I automatically I don't believe a word you say about anything else, because you're literally stupid. You're stupid if you think those came from a car. Really fucking stupid.
Testimony. He didn't get hit by a car, in her words. He just didn't get hit by a car. You remember the question that was posed by Mr. Brennan, did you consider the speed of the vehicle? And she said, speed didn't matter, because he didn't get hit by a car. She repeated it 3 times because it's true, not just because she says so, but because the medical evidence proves it. The medical science proves it. There was no collision.
Correct.
Dr. Rinchler told you unequivocally and just as firmly he didn't get hit by a car. The Commonwealth has not met their burden. They cannot meet their burden. The Commonwealth hasn't called a single medical professional, not one, to testify that John's wounds came from being hit by a car. Not Dr. Squirty-Bello, not Dr. Isaac Wolf. Contrast that with the caliber and the quality of the experts who came in here to tell you what is obvious to anyone with common sense. Those wounds on his right arm are from a dog. This was not an oversight by the Commonwealth. It's just that there is no one out there, no matter how big a check you write. There's not a medical expert who's going to disagree with that. The fact is, this is the central fact in the case. The only fact that matters is literally uncontested by every medical expert. Uncontested, undisputed. There is no evidence that John was hit by a car.
Correct.
None.
None.
How much more reasonable doubt could there be? This case should be over right now. Done. Because there was no collision. So given all that, how did Karen Reed end up sitting here? Why is she even here? Why is she in that chair? Why is she in this courtroom? There is a reason for that. And it's a reason they don't want to tell you, and it's a reality they don't want to admit to. The reason we're here is because the system The very system that was meant to protect her, that was meant to protect all of us, that system has failed badly.
I really liked this too because some of the jurors that came out to speak, one in particular that was actually a deliberating juror from the last trial, Ronnie. And this was so scary. Like if you think about ever, God forbid, being on trial for something that you didn't do. But he said a lot of the people who thought she was guilty, they just said, well, she was there, he was there, and she's sitting in that chair. So she must be guilty. First of all, you're all fucking so stupid if you think that. I mean, oh my God, how stupid. How stupid can you be to even think that way? So I really liked how Alan Jackson was like, so why is she sitting here? Yeah, explain it to them. Explain it to them so that when they go back there and some dumb fuck says to them, well, she was there. When Jeff Williams back in the jury room says, well, she was there and John was there and the Commonwealth charged her with a crime, so she must be guilty. Someone can say, no, she's there because the system failed her. Because Proctor didn't do a proper investigation. That's why she's sitting there.
So now let's discuss the facts that were and were not presented by the Commonwealth in this case. Over the next few minutes, I want to talk about the utter failure of the police to investigate this properly and to investigate this fully. And what you're going to see is that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator for the Commonwealth, did nothing to actually and properly investigate this case. Let's start with the house. That's the most logical place to start. I think you'd agree. Brian Albert's house, where John's body was discovered lifeless in the lawn. A police officer, is found dead on the front lawn, and no one secures the scene. No tape, no preservation of evidence, no crime scene log, no search warrants, no consent searches, no photographs of the house interior. They didn't treat the house as a crime scene, and shamefully, they didn't even treat the yard as a crime scene. The lame excuse offered by retired Lieutenant Gallagher: it was really cold and windy, and I didn't know if there was a crime that had been committed. What? You didn't know that a crime had potentially been committed? You have a man laying dead in the yard, and here are the undisputed facts that those officers were confronted with. Black eyes. Obviously, black eyes are consistent with a fight. Bloody nose, also consistent with a fight. Bleeding from the face, consistent with a physical altercation. A cut over the right eye, consistent with a punch. No coat in the freezing cold, not dressed for outside, dressed for inside. And one shoe on. I wonder where the other shoe could be. I don't know, maybe in the house 30 feet away.
No,
and then you find a broken and shattered drinking glass next to him, the type of glass that you might find, I don't know, let me think about this, in a kitchen, in a house, 30 feet away. And John's phone was tucked neatly under his back shoulder.
Oh, Jeff!
Lieutenant Gallagher.
Hey, Jeff, come back. Come back to the conversation, Jeff. Didn't you just say a few minutes ago it was under his body, not under his shoulder? Okay. Yeah, sure, Jan.
Gallagher actually claimed he did not know it was a potential crime that needed investigating. The neighbor across the street, Detective.
Also, I don't hear many people talking about this, but I was thinking about the glass because Karen says she picked like a small piece of glass out of the left side of his nose when she found him. And obviously there was a broken cocktail glass found next to him. I think it's very possible that when Chloe attacked John, however he was holding his glass, I think the glass probably broke. Whether he dropped it, whether he like threw it at the dog, whatever happened, because obviously they threw that glass out there with him. But that would explain how something could have gotten into a piece of it could have gotten into his nose. Even though Hank Brennan kept trying to suggest that it was a plastic piece, which like literally no one ever said that. Hank Brennan's such a fucking gaslighting rat fuck.
Lieutenant Kelleher had a ring camera that was pointed at the exact direction where John O'Keefe would have been hit, and nobody bothered to secure it.
Nope.
Nobody bothered to secure it. Nobody even bothered to look at it.
Nope.
Of course this was a potential crime scene. Of course it was. Let's not forget this was Brian Albert's house, and that comes with privileges.
Yep.
Quote, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Nope. He's a Boston cop too. End quote. That quote starts to make a little more sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, Alan.
Michael Proctor wrote those words just hours after John's body was found. He sent this in a private chat, in a private text he never, ever believed would ever be revealed. He sent that text in a series of messages that now belong to you. You weren't given the opportunity to hear from Michael Proctor, but you can read his thoughts for yourself. And I urge you, go read them. They're in Exhibit 209, in case you're wondering.
As soon as I got back to the jury room, I would be like, bring out Exhibit 209. Bring out 209. We're going to have a dramatic reading of 209 before we fucking do anything. Bring me 209.
But here are the highlights. Proctor starts the conversation. Quote, all the powers that be want answers ASAP. He's getting pressure, obviously. get this done. His friend then asks what Proctor's probably thinking at the time. Quote, I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cups. Something stinks. And Proctor responds, yeah, to the something stinks. And then he goes on, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Think about that. Hours into this investigation, there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. She's a whack job cunt. Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass bitch. She's got a leaky balloon knot, leaks poo, 0 chance she skates. She's fucked. And up to this point, Michael Proctor had done 0 investigation. Nothing.
Nothing.
Save talked to a grand total of 3 people, all of whom were named Albert or McCabe. That's it. And this was his mindset. This is the same lead investigator who sent the group chats that you heard about with Sergeant Butnick. Late night, sitting at his office, rifling through Karen's phone, bragging about looking for naked pictures of her. That text wasn't sent to his buddies or his friends. That text was sent to his supervisors at the Massachusetts State Police, for God's sake. And what was their response? Sergeant Buchanan liked this conduct with a big old thumbs up.
Big old thumbs up.
He encouraged it. Ladies and gentlemen, a lead investigator is every investigator is supposed to be objective, an objective fact finder. No bias, no agenda. Michael Proctor went far beyond just insulting Karen Read. He dehumanized this woman. He betrayed her as a human being.
It's so true. Like, it's just so fucking true. This isn't after some lengthy investigation where, you know, he's making all these comments. This is after he talked to 3 people who he knew. And he decided he wasn't going to go any further than that. And now he's calling her a whack job cunt and talking about her medical issues, which clearly Jen McCabe told him about, which is also bullshit. That stupid fucking bitch. I hate Jen McCabe so much. So much. So much. It's just so wrong. It's just so wrong how he treated her and how he talked about her just hours into this investigation. And he was so biased. And obviously, I mean, the Massachusetts State Police fucking fired him. Also, you know what kind of bugs me? You know what I was thinking about today? This is just kind of a side rant, because I watch a lot of different law tubers, you know, and watch their reactions to this. And there's some, you know, really good ones out there that I really like. But, you know, they're always like, I try really hard not to swear, just in case you guys are watching with your kids. Excuse me, they're watching a murder trial, ma'am. A murder trial. If they're watching a murder trial with their kids, are we really worried about saying the word fuck? Really? But I digress.
He was fired for this blatant bias. If the Massachusetts State Police can't trust him, how can you trust him with this investigation? And
Bingo.
With your verdict?
How could you?
And with Karen Read's life. The lead investigator in the murder trial was never called to testify. Think about that.
Yeah.
That should stop you in your tracks. Wouldn't you want to hear from Michael Proctor? Wouldn't you want to hear from the lead investigator in the case? Don't you have questions? The Commonwealth did not present
I'd be
their
sitting there
own
like,
lead investigator
yes,
to the jury, the very
yes.
jury who was charged with judging the investigation. Michael Proctor clearly is radioactive, and the Commonwealth stayed away from it. Michael Proctor is no longer a Massachusetts State Police officer. He wasn't transferred. He didn't go on sabbatical. He didn't retire.
He's
He
not
didn't resign.
dead.
He was fired. He was terminated for cause. The Massachusetts State Police investigated him, found him guilty of dishonorable conduct, not just for those text messages, folks, for sharing confidential information with witnesses and for bias. Not just any bias. Bias in this case.
Yeah.
Fired.
Yeah.
This is the man who touched every...
Imagine being on the jury and you go to bed every night thinking, wow, I sure made the right decision sending a woman to jail for the rest of her life, knowing that the lead investigator of her case got fired for his conduct and being biased against her. But yeah, I sure made the right decision, even though no one testified that he was hit by a car. Come the fuck on.
single piece of important evidence in this case. All the evidence that was brought before you in this trial went through his hands one way or another. The shirts, the shards. Remember that when Mr. Brennan gets up and gives his closing argument.
I don't even think he talked about the shirts and the shards, which
all
is
in Michael
insane.
Proctor's possession. Mr. Brennan and the Commonwealth, I think, have pinned their hopes on some microscopic pieces of, or close to microscopic pieces of plastic that were claimed to have been scraped from the hoodie several months after the fact. What he failed to ask every single witness, was who had access to that shirt and who had access to those taillight fragments, and the answer is it was Michael Proctor. Not for days, not for weeks, for months on end, for months unaccounted for, before they were submitted to the crime lab, before they were ever scraped. Just look at the chain of custody documents. You've got them. Why didn't Michael Proctor give those clothes to Maureen Hartnett with the crime lab when she was at Canton PD just days after the fact to receive those solo cups? Remember that? Just a few days later, she was there. She drove up, she did the driving to take the solo cups in the grocery bag, which has a ridiculous aspect to it in and of itself as well. Why not just give her the shirts as well? Give her the taillight fragments if any were found at that point. Why hold on to them?
I don't even think I mentioned that when I was going through my overview the other day. They collected the blood from the crime scene in red solo cups that they got from the deputy police chief across the street. So they didn't ask him for his Ring camera, but they went in his house and got red fucking solo cups to collect blood evidence in. And then they put those red solo cups into a grocery bag that was like in one of their back seats. That's how they treated the crime scene. Because God forbid they have to go back to Canton PD, which is 5 minutes down the fucking road, to get some like actual evidence collection shit. No, they were too busy, securing the crime scene. Even though they didn't do that.
Why wait until March to book those into evidence? Now let's talk about some of the other problems with the Commonwealth's evidence. As I indicated, there was no blood, no skin, no tissue, no DNA found on a single piece or shard of the taillight that the Commonwealth claims cut and sliced into John O'Keefe's arm.
Correct.
Where is that trace evidence? Where is that biological evidence? The DNA. Where is it? They got nothing. Not a single piece that the Commonwealth wants you to believe cut up John's arm. How is that possible? It's not possible. The only way it's possible is if those shards never touched his arm.
Right.
The one sample of DNA that they did find, by the way, was found on the outer, smooth part of the housing. Not any shard, it was the outer, smooth part of the housing. Nothing that they claim actually came in contact with John O'Keefe. Number two, that sample had DNA of two other men, two other unidentified males. It tells you that DNA had nothing to do with the car strike. That DNA would be expected to be, John's DNA would be expected to be all over that car. Inside, outside, he had access to that car months and months and months. He was in and out of it all the time. Show me some blood, then we'll talk. They can't. And they won't, because it doesn't exist.
Me the
The
blood!
SUV never hit John. The hair found on the bumper. The Commonwealth really stretched its own credibility on this one. That magic little hair on the SUV supposedly survived a 37-mile drive in 47-mile-an-hour winds. But that little magic hair just clung there. Just hung on.
That little magic
That same hair that moved in between photos in the Sally Port. Remember that? There were two photos taken, and it was either the breath of the photographer or just the movement of walking by the hair. It literally moved between the two photographs. But that hair supposed to have hung on in a 37-mile drive in a blizzard. The only thing that hair proves is that the Commonwealth is embarrassingly grasping at straws. That hair has nothing to do with anything. But it doesn't stop there. There was another revelation at trial, a big one, a huge one, and it came from a very unlikely source. Christina Hanley, the quiet, reserved criminalist who told you something the Commonwealth likely did not want revealed, because it's devastating to their case. Absolutely devastating. And it's this. The glass on the bumper didn't match the cocktail glass.
Oops.
Nothing.
Oops.
Remember, February 11th, Michael Proctor, without any other person with him, no witness, no supervisor, no other person with him, claims to have found a single piece of glass at the scene. February 11th, single piece of glass, Michael Proctor. Keep that in mind.
2 weeks
the glass
later.
on the bumper that didn't match the cocktail glass, one piece did match one other thing. The Proctor glass. Those two go together. The only two things that go together from that bumper are the Proctor glass. We know that there's no glass on the taillight. We know that nothing else was shattered.
That's the craziest thing. Like, that to me is the most telling thing about Proctor planted evidence. Because they found a broken cocktail glass next to John's body. And in my opinion, I think that Proctor wanted more evidence because he wanted it cut and dry. He wanted this to be over. And so he sprinkled some random ass piece of glass on the bumper of her car, not thinking, because he's a dumb fuck, not thinking that they were going to test the glass and compare it to the piece of glass that was found next to John's body. Then 2 weeks later, Proctor's just, he's just driving by 34 Fairview Road. He's just driving by, happens to, he's like, oh, maybe there's more evidence that we haven't collected in the last 2 weeks. So he just stops by, and what do you know? He finds a glass. He finds a piece of glass. What are the odds? 2 weeks later, Michael Proctor by himself finds that piece of glass at 34 Fairview. And I'll be damned. The glass on her bumper matches that glass, the one that Michael Proctor found, but not the glass found next to John's body. That's where Proctor went. He went wrong. Oh, man. His stomach must have sank when he found out that they were going to test that glass. Piece of shit.
On the vehicle. Therefore, that glass had to be placed there. Didn't come from a crash. Didn't come from a cocktail glass. So how did it get sprinkled on the back of the bumper? proverbial fingerprints are on that glass on the bumper. The only thing it matched was Michael McGill. What about the Ford Edge and that snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? He observed that Ford Edge parked outside Brian Albert's house at 3:30 a.m. That vehicle was moved directly in front of where John's body was found sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. The only person connected to a car of that make and model, Brian Albert. Michael Proctor did nothing to investigate that point. Did nothing to investigate whose Ford Edge was parked in a spot specifically to block the line of sight in the exact position where John's body would be later found by Karen Reed. No one.
No.
Not Michael Proctor or anybody else checked it for evidence. No one even asked any questions about it. That Ford Edge, Brian Albert's Ford Edge, completely ignored.
And even if you don't think that that Ford Edge was connected to dumping the body in any fashion, aren't they like a super eyewitness? Because they were parked right in front of where a dead body was? Wouldn't you want to talk to them even if it's just for that? Like, hey, let's try to find out who was in that car because they will prove our case that there was a fucking body on the lawn? No, they didn't. No interest. They had no interest in finding that out.
Michael Proctor failed to interview obvious witnesses in this case. Why? Why didn't he want to speak to the snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? Why did he falsely claim that no one plowed the roadway that morning? When police dash cam video, you saw the dash cam, it shows plows going back and forth all morning.
Yeah.
Why did he wait so long, years even, to interview Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel, individuals who were literally outside 34 Fairview at the exact same time
More
John and
eyewitnesses.
Karen arrived at Brian Albert's house that night? Brian Loughran, had he been investigated or interviewed, would have told Michael Proctor that he drove past the lawn multiple times on January 29th, and there was no body on the lawn.
Nobody.
He would have had a perfect view. Remember, the weatherman told you there was only enough snow at that time. I think he said, in a very charming phrase, only enough snow to track a cat. I think that was it. There was no body there. Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel would have told him that they arrived at 30.
Tony says, if I murdered somebody in my house, I would not throw his body in my front yard. So I understand what you're saying, but bear with me. First of all, I don't think that they murdered him intentionally. It wasn't like this super thought out plan. I think he accidentally died. Whether it's from a fight or from Chloe or whatever, he fell and he hit his head and they obviously went into cover-up mode. But think about this for a second. If they put him anywhere else except for the front yard. Now, also, these are detectives and these are feds. There's an ATF agent, there's a Boston 30-year detective, other police officers that are in this house, okay? So what do they know? They know that if his body is found anywhere except that front lawn where they can say he never came in the house, they are going to be implicated. So, imagine they chop his body up into a million pieces and dump it in the river. Well, how do they explain that? They're always going to be kind of a suspect because it's going to be like, well, he came in your house and now he's in a million pieces in the river. So how the fuck did that happen? Karen didn't cut him up into a million pieces. Or you drive and you dump his body in the woods. Well, how the fuck did he get back to the woods when Karen dropped him off on the front lawn? So I generally agree with you. You wouldn't throw somebody that you killed or that died in your house on the front lawn unless your plan was to say he never came in the house. Then that's a really good plan. And oh, by the way, Tony, it worked. It worked. Because here we are. So, I mean, if you're the homeowner, given the fact pattern of this story, what do you do with the body if he dies in your house? I mean, presumably you call 911 because you're not a fucking psychopath like Brian Albert. But presume you don't do that and you go into cover-up mode. Given the fact pattern of this case, what do you do with the body? What is better than just throwing him out on the front lawn and saying he never came in the house? I don't know what happened. Maybe he slipped and fell. Maybe he got hit by a plow. Maybe his crazy bitch girlfriend ran him over. We don't know because tell him the guy never came in the house. Those are the words of the people that were in the house. Tell him the guy never came in the house. Yikes.
Before Fairview, shortly after Karen and John pulled up behind them, and they would have told Michael Proctor, at least Heather would have told Michael Proctor, that when she left 10 minutes later, she drove past the SUV and observed Karen Reed in the driver's side, dome light on, passenger seat empty.
Yeah.
So where was John? Wasn't outside, wasn't sitting down, wasn't laying down. There's only one place he could be.
The house.
We could all say it together if you could talk with me. He was in the house.
I would have yelled it if I was
Michael
a
Proctor
jerk.
did not want to have those answers. He did not want to have to disclose those answers. He didn't want the truth. The Commonwealth has presented a shred of evidence of when Karen Reed consumed her last drink that night. Think about that. That's critical information that the Commonwealth has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. They have to prove when her last drink was that night. They have to prove it. We don't have to prove or disprove anything. Every single witness who was asked and who had an opportunity to observe Karen that night said the same thing. She wasn't drunk, she wasn't stumbling, she wasn't slurring her words. She was, in the words of Ms. Kolakithis, completely normal. Even Jennifer McCabe grudgingly had to admit that fact.
All these fucking people drove drunk that
night. Instead, they used Yuri Buchanan.
Brian Higgins drove drunk
and count sips of alcohol,
to the police station.
He admittedly got wrong. According to Ian Whiffen, the Commonwealth's own expert, the location data, using location data on John's phone, showed Karen driving lawfully. She was driving safely. She was under the speed limit. She was slowing and stopping at stop signs, slowing around corners. And Ryan Nagel corroborated that when he saw her make that left-hand turn onto Fairview. The Commonwealth has an incredibly high burden to prove that Karen was driving under the influence. They have failed to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty because it depends on when she had her last drink. What happened after she got home and she was upset with John for not coming?
Yeah, and here's another thing. They didn't even test her blood. They didn't even give her like a breathalyzer or anything that morning. It wasn't like, hey, you just confessed to killing your boyfriend and you seem like you're super wasted, so let's arrest you and check your blood. That's not what happened. They drew her blood when she was in the hospital when she got sectioned because she said she was going to off herself. And so then they like extract, and that was taken at, I don't know, I want to say like 9 a.m. So, and it's, so they take her blood, they do this like extrapolation and this formula, and they give you this range of what her BAC could be. And it's like, okay, yeah, but like Alan Jackson just said, when did she have her last drink? Like, I think the formula they used, they assumed her last drink was at midnight or 12:30. Well, you don't fucking know if she drank after that. So, and if she drank when she got home from John's house because she was pissed off, then her BAC at 9 a.m. is going to be higher than it would have been when she was driving at midnight. So that's what Jackson's saying. Like, they have to prove that to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And usually, they don't let you extrapolate for back that long. Like, if you took a blood test that was, I don't know, fucking 9 hours later, that's not usually good enough to use to extrapolate. And that actually comes into the DUI charge that the defense requested that I'm going to get into. And I'm going to get into my theory about why I think they added that at the end of this.
Back out of the house. That would answer that question. As you well know, no one searched the house for signs of a struggle. Not that night, not the next day. I'm talking about 34 Fairview. Not ever. Not once. Not with a warrant, not with consent. They never went into the basement, the stairwells. They didn't look at the walls. They didn't look in the garage. Nothing was ever examined. Nothing was checked for blood. Nothing was checked for DNA. They didn't look for alleged or ridged surface. Zero. You'll remember how surprised Jennifer McCabe was to recall that there was a garage door even on the house. Except this was her sister's house. She's been going to that house since she was 5. She's seen that house. She's been in and out of that house hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. She's been going to that house her entire life, and yet she acted surprised when I asked her about it. Remember Jennifer McCabe's answer when I asked her whether there was a door to the garage? I was asking about the front door, the side door, and the garage door, and her answer was, oh, actually there is a garage door.
That imitation is so funny.
Let's change the scenario. What if it wasn't the house of the Boston cop? What if it wasn't the house of Brian Albert? We can be certain that investigators would have torn that house apart to get answers about why a fellow police officer was laying dead on the homeowner's lawn.
Facts.
You can betcha.
Yeah.
But because this was Brian Albert's house, a Boston cop, nope. And because he was a fellow cop, an insider, they didn't even open the door. That is not justice, folks.
Nope.
That's just pure favoritism. Each of these facts is more than a question mark. They're failures of duty. They're blank spots on a map where justice is supposed to live. And every single one is a reason why you cannot convict Karen Read. Reasonable doubt abounds. If the Commonwealth failed to investigate every reasonable alternative, how dare they come in here and ask you for a verdict? They didn't investigate the case fully, and yet they're asking you to take the easy road and do their job for them.
Yeah.
These facts do not represent reasonable doubt. Nothing does. Every one of these facts that you're seeing that we're talking about represents reasonable doubt. Every one. The police and the prosecution are in a position to take people's liberty. It's the most dire and consequential act a civilized government can take against one of its citizens. Their obligation is not just to try to get it right. They have to convince you to the highest degree of certainty known in human affairs. They have to do it all, every bit of it, beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And they have not done that here. And how about the homeowner himself? The host, the first responder, the Boston cop, Brian Albert, who was sparring and practice fighting with Brian Higgins just minutes before John O'Keefe appeared at his house, 34 Fairview. Brian Albert, who was watching Chloe that night, the German Shepherd. Brian Albert, whose phone and his wife's phone were never secured. Brian Albert, who never came out of the house. But that doesn't mean he wasn't awake. It doesn't mean that he wasn't on his phone. Think about this. Jennifer McCabe claimed that her sister and Brian Albert both slept through this complete chaos right outside their bedroom window.
Bedlam.
Jennifer McCabe's phone records tell a different story, and they tell the truth. She spoke with him for the better part of a minute.
Yeah.
38 seconds to be detailed about it. At 5:07 a.m. And then she lied about that call. Remember that?
Yes.
What was the reason for that call at 5:07? Was it panic?
Yes.
Was it a warning?
Fuck yes. Fuck yes.
We know that conversation took place at the precise time Karen left her house to go search for John. 5:07.
You know what? You know what? Jen McCabe rant. Fuck you, Jen McCabe. Fuck you. Fuck you. You were the mastermind of this entire cover-up. Hashtag prove me wrong. Fuck you. And guess what? I can say that. Because fuck you. And Hank, in his closing argument, it was more so the defense of Jen McCabe rather than like Karen Read did this. But he's like, she is just a normal mom who woke up in the middle of the night and went out to help her friend. And now she's part of a conspiracy. No, Hank. No, Hank. No, 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 no. No, no. That lying bitch soccer mom lied to the feds that were investigating supposedly her bestie's death. And as Karen Read is frantic, leaving her driveway at 5:07 in the morning after she called you, she's frantic. She doesn't know where the fuck John is. And your bitch ass calls your sister. Calls your sister. Where John's body's laying. And you have a 38-second phone call. You deny it. You delete it. And you lie about it. But you did it. Because like Jeff likes to say, data doesn't lie. And you, Jen McCabe, you fucking called your sister at 5:07. And if there wasn't anything shady about it, you would have never lied about it. You would have said, yeah, as soon as she called me, I called this person, this person, this person. But you didn't do that. You left her off the list. You didn't say you talked to her. Not until you were confronted by the feds with your call log. That's so shady to me. And yeah, it was panic. It was go time. It was, holy shit, Karen just fucking called me. Because think about it. They had no idea how this night was going to, that this morning was going to unfold. They didn't know who was going to find John's body. They had no reason to think that Karen was going to call Jen McCabe in the morning. They didn't even have each other's phone numbers, actually. Karen had to call from John's niece's phone. So there was no reason for Jennifer McCabe to think Karen's going to call me to help look. They probably just thought Karen's going to go out looking for him. They're going to drive by. She's going to drive by and find him on the lawn. But when she called Jen to be like, hey, where the fuck's John? She 100% called her sister in a panic. Like, holy shit. She called me. Now I have to go help her. Fuck. But yeah, she's just a normal soccer mom.
We could answer those questions if we just had access to their phones. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Michael Proctor wasn't interested in their phones. Not only did he not secure their
those
phones,
are on Army bases.
he never even asked. And what about Brian Albert's dog? Quote, a dog with a history. A dog that is, quote, not good with strangers.
She transitioned
Dr.
to
Russell
Cora.
confirmed that John's pattern injuries were from a dog, just like the dog Brian Albert owned. And then Chloe just disappeared. Not there the next morning. None of the officers that you heard from said that there was a dog in the house. They didn't see her. She was just gone. And then ultimately gotten rid of altogether. Who gets rid of their family pet?
Psychopaths.
Michael Proctor wasn't interested in that either.
Nope.
And recall the group chat with the Alberts and the McCabes. They were getting their story straight. Matt McCabe, whom the Commonwealth did not call in this trial, instructed the group in that group chat, you'll recall, tell him to say the guy never came in the house. Think about that exact quote. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house.
The guy.
And Brian Albert, the patriarch of the family. Exactly. Exclamation point.
Yep.
He blessed it. With the truth, as we all know, you don't need to get your story straight. You don't need to tell someone what to say. It's just it's the truth.
Yeah, right.
And what about the Google search?
If John never came in the house, why do you even have to say that? Because it's just the truth, right? Like, if John never came in the house, then obviously that's what you would tell people. You don't need to be reminded. And you're calling him the guy, like 2 days after he died. And he's supposedly your friend.
A Google search that Jennifer McCabe admitted having made. A Google search that was timestamped by Celebrite. at 2:27 a.m., a Google search that read, Haslong to die in cold. It is uncontested and undisputed that that search was deleted. If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why does Jennifer McCabe have to lie about it?
Yeah,
why delete
exactly.
it? If the 2:27 a.m.
She's a
timestamp is not
bitch.
true, why create a false story about Karen screaming Google hypothermia? That's just a fabrication. That's just a made-up fact. And by the way, if someone does tell you Google hypothermia, why would you Google how long it takes to die in cold? Wouldn't you just Google hypothermia?
Yeah, yeah.
Jennifer McCabe enlisted Carrie Roberts to help.
But you want to know what Hank says? She has MS, so she was shaking. She probably can't fucking spell hypothermia, to answer your question, because she's a dumbass.
Shift the blame to Karen. Why go to that much effort unless you're trying to cover for something? Keep in mind the entire foundation of her claim that Karen said Google hypothermia is this fantasy about Karen screaming at the location, at the scene. That's her entire excuse. But that story went completely off the rails when Carrie Roberts admitted that she perjured herself to back up Jennifer McCabe's false story. That was a dramatic moment in court. It's an admission of perjury. You don't see that very often in a courtroom. It tells you everything you need to know about the character and quality of the prosecution's case and their witnesses. Lying and perjury and admitting to it.
So Carrie Roberts, the other woman that Karen called that morning, and she was the other person who was with Karen when they found John. She told the grand jury, when the grand jury came back with the murder indictment, that she overheard Karen asking Jen McCabe to Google how long to die in the cold at like 6:23 in the morning. Carrie told the grand jury that she actually heard that. And then Alan got her to admit, because I think she actually admitted to the feds. So of course, when the feds come knocking and they're like, hey, BTW, you can't lie to us. She admits, okay, I didn't actually hear that. Jen told me that when we were creating our timeline, because that's what people do, I guess. So he got her to admit on the stand that she lied to the grand jury about actually hearing Karen ask Jen that question. So Jen was just getting Carrie to help cover her ass too, because Jen needed to cover her ass for that 227 Google search. Because she's a fucking bitch.
A fundamental tenet of any investigation is to ensure that witnesses are independent and not influenced by other witnesses. You start by separating the witnesses. Michael Proctor did none of that in this case.
No, he didn't.
And we see the results. Think back to Jennifer McCabe's own text messages with Carrie Roberts. About Carrie Roberts, not with Carrie Roberts. No.
Yeah.
What Carrie Roberts didn't know was at the time she was being interviewed by the police, Jennifer McCabe was in real time. She was bragging about having influenced Carrie's testimony from her statements to the Alberts and the McCabes. Quote, she's telling them everything, all the stuff. Remember that timeline that we talked about with Jennifer McCabe? That's what she was referring to.
Yeah.
She's telling them everything that Jennifer McCabe had put in Carrie Roberts' timeline.
Right.
The Commonwealth wants you to believe that Karen Reed made a statement at the location, at the scene. I hit him. I'm sure you'll hear that from the prosecution in their final arguments. But their own witnesses contradict that. Jennifer McCabe admitted on cross-examination that her very first statement to law enforcement, confirmed that Karen didn't say anything. She asked, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? The physics and the science answer that question. Could you have hit him? No.
Nope.
You couldn't have. Sergeant Buchanan also testified that the only statements Karen Reed made at the scene, according to his conversations with the first responders, was, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? It wasn't a confession. It was confusion. And Dr. Russell explained that confusion. She told you why Karen Reed, or anybody in that position, might ask those questions. She was suffering from extreme grief reaction, which according to the evidence can last for years. Even her medical records confirm that diagnosis. It's common to ask those questions in grief. It's common to ask those types of questions in shock. You're trying to make sense out of the nonsensical in the moment. And the Commonwealth has tried to twist those words into a confession. There is no evidence that any officer at the scene ever heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. Not a single police officer at the scene came in to support the Commonwealth's claim. It's not on video, it's not on audio, it's not in a single police report, it's not in a single EMT or EMS report. Nowhere. The fact is, Karen never said, I hit him. You saw the video, multiple officers were right there. She simply never said it. What did Jennifer McCabe do and not do when she got to 34 Fairview? She'd have you believe, I want to set the scene for you, that she's confronted out of the blue with John O'Keefe's lifeless body. Her friend, John O'Keefe.
Her bestie.
He's bruised and battered, he's bleeding, his eyelid is cut, his nose is bleeding. Karen is screaming at the top of her lungs. Carrie is screaming back to Karen, shut up! Both women begin crying. Both women are giving CPR. There's chaos everywhere. It's building in the yard, just feet from Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert's window. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:07. With all this chaos going on, No answer. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:08 with all this chaos and bedlam going on. Still no answer. No lights come on in the house. In the midst of all this screaming and this chaos, Brian Albert doesn't come outside. Nicole Albert doesn't come outside during this maelstrom. And yet, Jennifer McCabe never goes inside.
No, she doesn't.
To check on her sister. There's literally no signs of life inside the house. And Jennifer McCabe doesn't take a step inside that house to check on her family.
Well, yeah, she just called them at 5:07. She fucking knew they were fine.
Everyone would sprint inside the house to make sure that there's no one in there that was hurt or injured or, God forbid, dead. Everyone would do that. But not Jennifer McCabe. The only
Not
way
that
makes
line,
sense
bitch.
is if Jennifer McCabe already knew that Brian and Nicole were just fine. That's the only reasonable explanation.
Yeah.
And the only way she would know that they were fine is if she knew what happened. But Michael Proctor never explored this incredibly suspicious behavior. Don't you have questions?
Yes.
This would give anyone reasonable doubt. And don't you have questions also about Brian Higgins? Michael Proctor certainly didn't. Higgins had been sending flirtatious and romantic texts to John's girlfriend, Karen Reed. You'll remember I asked Sergeant Buchanan a simple question. Were those texts flirtatious in nature? He refused to answer that simple question. Do you remember that? Quote, I'm not comfortable putting a label on that, end quote. He read the texts. It's not secret. Of course they were flirtatious. Of course they were romantic in nature. The reason he refused to answer that simple question is telling. It's because these flirtatious texts established a motive for Brian Higgins. Sergeant Buchanan could not bring himself to tell the truth. His bias was on full display. He was covering for another cop. Investigators also ignored Higgins' suspicious late-night visit to Canton Police Department. That was after a night of drinking, by the way. Why didn't they investigate this? What was so important that Higgins needed to go to the police station at that time, 1:30 in the morning, while drunk, by the way?
Literally.
I'm not interested in those facts. Remember, he's an ATF agent. He's a cop, a member of the Blue Wall, and best friends with Brian Albert.
Besties.
He would know that the CPD would be the first to get the call when someone reported John missing or injured. He would know what to look for, what to listen for, to determine if a report had been made, and when, and what the response was going to be. You saw the skulking through the hallways.
Skulking.
Moving bags between cars. And of course, that late night mysterious phone call on his cell phone. A phone that you don't have and that you'll never see.
Yeah, because it's destroyed on an army base.
And Michael Proctor never gave him a second look. All of that, the Commonwealth, who's supposed to be after the truth, didn't call it to the stand. If you had any unanswered questions about Brian Higgins, that's reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
The police didn't interview Brian Higgins on January 29th, 2022, but he was at the police station, as we've just seen. You heard evidence that Higgins and Chief of Police Kenny Berkowitz, also good friends, were in the Sallyport together with the SUV for a, quote, wildly long time. Kelly Dever, another Boston cop, told you that.
Oh my God, this chick.
She also told law enforcement agents that she found it, quote, weird that Higgins could have access to that very sensitive evidence, the SUV. Folks, there is never a situation in which a witness, a potential suspect even, should be given access to the evidence in a case. That's exactly what happened here. Higgins was given...
I actually don't know if I talked about this the other day, but... Did I? The defense called a witness this time around that they did not call the first time. And it was this woman who was... The day John died, she was working at the Canton Police. Her name's Officer Devers. And she was working in the dispatch room. And she was never interviewed by like anybody, but she was there at Canton PD on the day that John was found. So when the feds come and they start interviewing everybody, they interview her. And she tells the feds that she was working in dispatch. She saw Brian Higgins and Chief Berkowitz in the Sallyport with Karen Reed's vehicle for a, quote, wildly long time. And that she thought it was inappropriate because she knew Brian Higgins was at the party the night before and he was in there with a critical piece of evidence. And oh, by the way, that time period of when they were in the Sallyport together is missing. It's missing. Like the video's gone. So she gets transferred, or she transfers to the Boston PD, which is where John and Brian Albert both worked. And the police commissioner, now I'm thinking of like Blue Bloods. I'm thinking of Frank Reagan. Okay. I'm thinking of Frank Reagan calling up a rookie police officer who's about to go testify in a trial. And the police commissioner calls you one-on-one up to his office as a rookie cop. That's fucking weird, first of all. And apparently he said, we stand behind you. This was after the defense subpoenaed her to testify. They were like, we stand behind you.
SUV, and it's to light nearly immediately, according to Kelly Devers' statement.
regardless of what you have to say on the stand. And, oh, by the way, do the right thing. So then after that, she says, this was a false memory. I actually didn't see that. Ma'am, what? You're a police officer that presumably will have to testify again in your real life. And how in the fuck is anybody supposed to believe you and your investigative skills if you're out here creating false memories? Like that, are you stupid? So and her attitude on the fucking stand was next level country. I don't know if that's a word. Like CUNTRY, not country COUNTRY, like country, CUNTERY. It was next level country. And Alan Jackson would be like, he accidentally like called her Officer Devers because Alan Jackson doesn't give a fuck about this chick. So he called her Officer Devers, and he's like, just like you can't remember my name, I don't remember. Hey, bitch. Hey, bitch. This is why I couldn't ever be an attorney. People are like, you'd be such a great attorney. No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. Because someone talked to me like that, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Catch me fucking outside. Catch me outside.
To law enforcement. And it was at that exact time, the exact moment that Higgins would be in that Sally Port, that the 42 minutes of the Sally Port video is just missing. It's just gone, vanished.
No, it's crazy. It's fine.
That's convenient.
It's normal.
Now put in context the condition of that taillight when it was actually seized in Dighton. It was cracked, but not completely damaged. I asked you to compare and contrast Officer Kelly Dever, her attitude, her demeanor. That's all for you to judge. Her attitude, her demeanor, her truthfulness, her motives.
Country.
Compare and contrast that to Sergeant Nick Barrows. Who's more believable? Officer Barrows is unattached to any of the players in this grand play directed by Michael Proctor. He's truly independent. And what did he tell you? Was the taillight, he was asked, was the taillight in this condition when Michael Proctor picked up that SUV at 412? His answer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yep.
It was cracked, but not completely.
That was so powerful for me because he testified in the last trial, but the defense didn't cross-examine him because they were like, he was actually really good for us because he said that the taillight was cracked but not completely broken, and we don't know what he's going to say, so we're not going to fucking ask him any questions. And this time around, the Commonwealth didn't call him because they don't want the jury to actually know the truth, and the defense called him. And I think that says a lot about him, that in this controversial, very well-publicized trial, he's a sergeant. He's a police officer in like another town. And he doesn't know Michael Proctor, and he doesn't know any of these Albert fucks, and he doesn't know anybody at the Canton PD. So he's just like trying to do his job. And Michael Proctor calls him to be like, hey, can you get me a tow? Because I'm coming into your town. And now he's involved in this murder trial, and he doesn't change his testimony, regardless of who called him. Right? Unlike Officer Devers, who was a complete see you next Tuesday. And Officer Barrows, Sergeant Barrows, who came in and was like, yeah, this is what happened. And when they showed him a picture of Karen's taillight in the Sally Port garage, and they said, is this what her taillight looked like when you were towing her car? He said, absolutely not. Oh, okay. I mean, that to me, I remember when I watched that for the first time, I was like, that's it. That's the official nail in the coffin of the Commonwealth's case. You have a sergeant, no reason to lie. Same testimony as he gave last year, except this time the defense cross-examined him. I mean, well, they direct examined him because they called him. But they showed him that picture, and they didn't show him that picture last time. And they had him say, that is not what it fucking looked like. Pretty powerful.
Damaged, not smashed out like that. So how did the taillight get cracked? How did it end up in the condition where it was cracked, as Officer Barrows saw it, but not completely damaged? Well, you don't have to guess. There's a video.
This is the video of Karen backing out of John's driveway at 507. And you can see she hits his car.
And
the right rear taillight.
Confirms it. Look at the contact.
That's a recreation by Judd the Chud, trying to prove it didn't
further is
happen.
Confirmed by the fact that there were no taillight pieces found in any of the initial searches conducted at the scene.
Right.
2 searches, 50-foot area searched. Not a single fragment was found until after Michael Proctor had access to and control of that SUV and its taillight. What does that say about the character and quality of this case? It's revealing what happened here at trial. One of the most dramatic moments probably of the trial, Kelly Dever. How can you trust this investigation when you saw how far a police officer will go? You had a front row seat to the power of police manipulation and police corruption. A front row seat. Kelly Dever was interviewed by a separate law enforcement agency, not a friendly department, not Boston Police Department, not Michael Proctor's MSP, a different independent agency. She told those law enforcement agents in a formal interview that she saw Brian Higgins and Chief Kenneth Berkowitz alone in the Sallyport with the SUV. She was detailed, she was clear, she was unequivocal, she remembered the specifics, she recalled how it made her feel, quote, weird. She recalled how long Higgins spent, a quote, wildly long time, as she described. These are all incredible details to tell law enforcement. She couldn't have been clearer, she couldn't have been more specific. But then she's put on a witness list, and she's subpoenaed by the defense.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Then this rookie cop was called up to the police commissioner's office. The same commissioner that was the boss of Brian Albert.
Yeah.
They have a meeting, a private meeting.
A meeting.
He says, wink, wink, nod, nod. We support you, Officer Dever.
Officer
What else was said
Dever.
in that meeting? What else is reasonable to believe was said in that meeting? She claimed she couldn't remember. She claimed not to remember if he instructed her to do the right thing. But the commissioner of the Boston Police Department certainly said something to this rookie cop, and all of a sudden, that detailed, unambiguous, unequivocal statement to law enforcement became, what did she say? A false memory. Not I didn't say it. She admitted she said it.
Yeah.
She admitted she detailed the entire story. She just said, it's a false memory. What?
What?
So she's called to the commissioner's office to make sure that she would do the right thing. That's why she was called. And now we know what that means. In her words, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. I'll quote that again. Yeah. Quote, my
said that.
entire career depends on what I say here on the stand.
She said that.
You bet it does.
Yeah.
That's how it works. And that's how we got here.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you
That's how
have to
she's
ask
in
yourself,
that
can you
chair.
trust the Commonwealth's case? Can you trust their witnesses?
This is good.
Can you
He's
trust their
wrapping up.
evidence? And here are a few of the highlights. A video that was played in a courtroom and sold as accurate.
This is the
Turns out-
inverted video.
Was completely inverted. Flipped backward. Completely false.
So, the video that they showed originally in the first trial is the video on the left. Okay. That's from the Sallyport garage. And they showed the video on the left in trial. And they were like, see where that red circle is? This is just a screen grab, but you can see it better when it's the actual video. But that red circle is Michael Proctor. And they're like, see, he didn't go by the right rear tail light. You can see the right rear tail light right there. He's nowhere near it. You see? And all of us watching the trial, like, if you look down at that police car that's in the foreground, you can see that the word police is reversed. There's a number on the garage, a number 4. When they pull the garage down, the 4 is reversed. So that's how it, like, people who were just watching the trial in the comment section were like, wait a second, is that video reversed? Because, like, all this shit is reversed in this video. And the Commonwealth just basically says, hey, is this a accurate portrayal of what you see? And Michael Proctor didn't go by the taillight. And Sergeant Buchanan was like, yep, it's accurate. And then the defense gets up and they're like, that actually wasn't accurate, was it? And the photo on the right here is the actual video. Flipped the right way. You see the word police is no longer reversed. And now you see Michael Proctor in the red circle back by the right fucking rear tail light. These people are so insanely shady. They tried to put that reversed video in front of the jury. And the defense had to correct it. How fucking shady is that shit?
The test that formed the basis of their entire
This
theory
is
of the
the blue
case.
paint test.
Watch closely as Dr. Welcher stands as a surrogate.
Yeah. He's dressed like John. Car's going 2 miles an hour and he leans into it. Oh, yep, because that's what John
Is
would
that
do.
what these tests? Or is that a manipulation?
Yes.
Dr. Welcher tried to deceive and fool you by leaning into the car, manipulating the results of his own test.
Yeah.
When the truth was revealed by Dr. Rentschler, the Commonwealth spent the next hour cross-examining it about how that test was meaningless. It actually didn't mean anything.
Right.
Well, that's convenient now that we realize that it was a manipulated test and it actually does mean nothing. It didn't represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. That's what was suggested.
Yeah.
That test does not represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. Really? Then why was Dr. Welcher playing dress-up in John O'Keefe's clothes, or identical clothes to John O'Keefe, when he was holding a glass? Why was he holding the glass right behind the vehicle? And why was he standing with his right arm oriented to the right rear taillight? If he wasn't trying to recreate the circumstance that is the Commonwealth's entire theory.
Yeah. Think about how stupid that is. They paid $400,000 for Judd the Chud to do that test. And then they had the nerve to suggest that that wasn't a recreation of what they thought happened. Well, then what the fuck was it? And why was it introduced at trial? If it wasn't a recreation, how is it relevant to these proceedings? You know what I mean? Like it clearly was. If it was just what judge just like for shits and giggles decided to run this test and you put video in of it. No, clearly that's what you thought happened until ARCA came in and they were like, yeah, I know that we saved the lives of soldiers. But the Commonwealth thinks we're not good enough to determine that Judd the Chud is a fucking moron.
The Commonwealth stood up here with a straight face and told you they weren't trying to suggest that that's how John was hit by the car. Of course they were trying to suggest that's their theory of the case. They only abandoned it 2 days ago when it was revealed by our experts that it's physically impossible. That silent witness, that science, that physics, has become very pesky to the Commonwealth because there was no collision. Dr. Welcher also told you under oath that there were no x-rays taken of John's arm. He tried to deceive you into believing that John's arm might have been broken. I don't know. I didn't see any x-rays, so I can't tell you what the damage was inside the arm. Really? The Commonwealth has had those x-rays in their possession for 3 years. And again, it took the defense to bring out the truth. The x-rays do not fit the Commonwealth's theory, so you weren't shown. And Dr. Welcher wasn't going to admit it.
Nope.
And my goodness.
And you know what's super interesting? They were going to call Dr. Welcher, Judd the Chud, they were going to call him back on rebuttal. And I think this is the reason why they didn't. Because when Judd the Chud was on the stand, he was like, can't be sure if he had any hairline fractures in his arm or his hand because there were no x-rays done. And all three of those fucking prosecutors, Rat Fuck Hank and Adam Lally and Laura McLaughlin, all three of them sitting there. Now, one of them got up and was like, hey, we sent you the x-rays, remember? Because there's only two options. The two options are, one, Judd the Chud is an idiot, which he is, but you would generally think that he, while looking at the medical file, would see the x-rays of the arm that they claimed was hit with a car. So either complete and utter incompetence on behalf of Judd the Chud, or Rat Fuck Hank did not turn over the x-rays to Judd. Because if Judd saw the x-rays and saw that there were no broken bones or hairline fractures or anything of the sort, he'd be like, I can do that blue paint test, but like he wasn't hit with a car, just so you know. So I think, had they brought him back on cross-examination or in rebuttal, then on cross-examination, the defense would have been like, hey, you know how you said when you were here that there weren't any x-rays? Take a look at these. They've been introduced into evidence. Now what's your thought, Judd?
Then we get to the sweatshirt.
The sweatshirt.
That was a moment.
Yeah, it was.
Mr. Brennan stood here in front of you and dramatically held up John's sweatshirt.
Rat fuck.
Not just to the witness, but to you. And asked Dr. Wolf about it multiple times. Specifically, while he was in that plexiglass, asked Dr. Wolf about the multiple holes in the back of the sweatshirt. He interrupted Dr. Wolf, and Dr. Wolf started to look at the sweatshirt and say, and he said, how about here? Here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. Dramatically tapping on that plexiglass.
Yeah.
It was clear what the suggestion was. That the holes in the back of John's sweatshirt were from January 29th.
Yep.
That's the impression that was expected to be left with you. That's the impression that he wanted to leave with you. And that's false. The truth is, the Commonwealth created those holes. They aren't holes from road rash. They weren't made on January 29th. Those are cuttings from the Commonwealth's own crime lab, folks. That's what those holes are. And even with three prosecutors, all three of them, sitting right there in the room at the time, it had to be the defense to correct that record, to bring out the truth. If we hadn't done that, what impression would you folks have been left with? That's more than negligence. That's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yeah. Lying fuckers.
I'm going to guess that Mr. Brennan's not going to say much about this, about the fraud that was attempted on you. And if he doesn't, that speaks louder than any concocted excuse that the Commonwealth might come up with.
Checkmate, bitch. Checkmate, bitch. Because guess what Hank Brennan doesn't fucking do? He doesn't acknowledge this. Not once in his closing argument does he acknowledge this. Alan Jackson stared that motherfucker down in a showdown like in an old Western saloon. They walked 3 steps, they turned, and they drew, and Alan Jackson fucking won. He said he's not going to get up here and give you some excuse. He's not going to do that. Which, think about it. It would be very easy for him He's a special prosecutor. Now, granted, the jury doesn't know that, but they do know that he hasn't been on this case the whole time. They've alluded to that he's fairly new, Ratfuck Hank, to the whole trial. It would be very easy for him to get up and be like, my bad. I take a mulligan on that one. There's a lot of evidence. Shit's moving really fast. I messed up. That's on me. I apologize. That I should have gotten up and corrected it. Like, to even save just a shred of your credibility with the jury, don't you have to do that even if it's not true? No, Hank doesn't do that, which tells you that he knew exactly what the fuck he was doing.
It's shameful. It's shameful.
It
We
is.
are after the truth in this courtroom.
You can't handle the truth.
You're entitled to it. Demand it. Why would the Commonwealth stoop to a stunt like that? It's desperation.
It's desperation.
What you now know, what their experts know. There was no collision. So now we've reached the final moments of the trial, and you've seen the facts and you've seen the evidence, and we've just talked about dozens and dozens and dozens of facts that are reasonable doubt. Each one of them are reasonable doubts. These facts, these note cards that you're looking at, piled high, one on top of another, literally stacks and stacks of them covering the table. As you mentally sift through those cards, realize that every one of them is a massive hole in the Commonwealth's case. Every single one of the note cards represents a hole in the Commonwealth's case. If you're holding mentally even one of those cards, you're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. Reasonable doubt is not a sliding scale. It's a wall. If the Commonwealth cannot get over every one of these dozens of walls, you have to acquit Karen Read. The truth is, Karen Read is not guilty. Not because of technicalities, but because the facts, the law, the science, the physics, the data, they all say so. They demand it. The Commonwealth does not have a theory about how John was hit by the car. They haven't even shown you that it's possible that he was hit by a car. And the reason they haven't is because it's not possible that he was hit by a car. There was no collision. Your job is not to do their job, their burden, entirely. It's theirs. They have to prove this case and their theory beyond all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And not only do they not have a theory, they can't prove one that doesn't exist. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed. They failed to provide you with a truthful representation. They failed to prove the essence of their case, that John was being hit by a car to begin with. They failed to prove any intent on the part of Karen Read, because she has none. They failed to investigate the actual suspects in this case. They failed to present the lead investigator to you. They failed to justify the perjured testimony that you heard discussed in this case. They failed to hold accountable an officer who came in here and lied to you and claimed false memories so she could do the right thing to cover for a fellow cop or cops. They failed to maintain a fair and unbiased and honest investigation. They failed to present you with the truth. And this is what you get. An investigation that's riddled with errors and omissions and a rush to judgment and conflicted and corrupted from the start. Every part of it. That is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. How can they ask you to be morally certain based on this evidence? It's a tragedy. When the government fails so completely, so catastrophically, when there are dozens and dozens of points of reasonable doubt on the table, your duty, your oath is clear. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Read. Not just because you can, because you must. Justice demands it. Do not let the Commonwealth get away with this. Don't let them get away with this. Do not endorse and sanction an investigation that is broken and corrupted top to bottom. But just as importantly, do not let Michael Proctor get away with it. Oof. And make no mistake about it, folks. If you convict Karen Read of anything, if you convict her of anything, science, the physics, the data, they lose. But tragically,
you lose.
Michael Proctor wins. Remember his text. Something stinks. Yeah. Serious charges will be brought on the girl. She's fucked. Could you ever say to yourself, this is justice?
Nope.
The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel, through your verdict, that justice cannot be bent, and that it will not be buried.
Oh, that
Read,
lip bite.
Not guilty. Not guilty. Not guilty. Thank you.
Whew. So good. So that was the defense closing arguments. I've been going for an hour and 45 minutes. I'll go through some of Hank's. It's really fucking boring, but I feel like I have to at least show you a little bit of it. But I did want to mention, it's interesting. The Commonwealth did not charge Karen Read with just a straight up OWI, like, DUI out here in Michigan. But the defense asked for it to be added to charge number 2, which is manslaughter. But if you get like all the way to the bottom, it's just drunk driving. It's just like DUI that they could find her guilty of. Flat out DUI, not like manslaughter DUI, nothing, just flat out DUI. And she had asked for that to be added, which I thought was interesting. And I think, if I put myself in her shoes, first of all, I would rather have them find me guilty of a DUI than have to go through this again. Right? Like, if there are some people, which, if Karen Read listened to that other juror that came out and talked about what the deliberations were like, and, heard that, people wanted to convict her of something because they didn't like the fact she was drinking and driving, then yeah, you throw the DUI on there. It would be her first offense. And I think that it would be appealable based on the different law tubers that I'm hearing, because of the way that her blood alcohol was tested 9 hours later. That's like not a reliable test. So it's very appealable. So I think even if they did convict her of just that, could you imagine how fucking embarrassing that would be for the Commonwealth and people like Jeff Williams who think justice is coming, and they only convict her of a DUI after 2 trials and millions of taxpayer dollars, and she walks away with a DUI? Oh my God, how fucking embarrassing. But honestly, if I were in that jury, not guilties across the board. I'm not even going to give you the DUI, Commonwealth. You guys can fuck all the way off for trying to lie to me. All right, let's play a little bit of this rat fuck. Also, shout out to the trial channel. That's where I'm pulling these from. You can literally, I think it's a she. I've just been assuming it's a she. I don't know why. But the trial channel cuts down all of the testimony and like takes out all the super long sidebars and delays and stuff like that. So that's where I'm pulling all this footage from. But this is rat fuck Hank. I'll play some of it. I might put it a little bit faster because ain't nobody got time to listen to this bitch. Oops, definitely not 0.25. All right, if this is too fast for you, then slow me down. Slow me down. We're definitely not listening to this whole thing because he sucks. Just look at this guy. Oops.
John O'Keefe was 46 years old. 46 years old. He spent his life helping people. He's described as a good man, kind, generous, thoughtful.
Surrounded by
He was also a police
dumbasses.
officer. He worked to help the community. Everything you've heard about this man, he was a good man. He helped people. When his niece and nephew had nobody, he took them in. He took them in. John O'Keefe seemed to be the type of person who would help anybody at any time. And on January 29th,
Doesn't he look like a rat?
John O'Keefe needed some help. He needed help from somebody else. You see, John O'Keefe had just been hit by Karen Read in front of 34 Fairview Road, and he lay on the ground, dying. And he needed help. Someone to reach out a hand, someone to knock on a door, someone to make a phone call to 911, even anonymously. Not take responsibility, just to help.
Yeah, that would have been nice
And
if
there's
they
only
would have
one
done
person
that.
in this entire planet who could help him that morning, to give him a chance. Maybe it was a 33% chance if he met the Isaac Wolf of the world, but to give him a chance. And that one person who could help him that morning was this defendant right here, Karen Read. And she made it.
You'll see this throughout this, but he just pointed at her, and then at one point he walks in front of the table and he stands in front of her. This is why I just don't put me in a courtroom. Do not put me in a fucking courtroom, because I would be like, come at me, motherfucker. Come at me, bitch. You little rat fuck. I'd be staring him down because it makes his bitch ass, it hurts his feelings. Also, like 15 people left the 34 Fairview that night. I mean, maybe not 15. That's probably like the total of the night. Let's think about who left 34 Fairview Road, who could have helped John had they, I don't know, seen a body on the front lawn as their lights illuminated the way as they left the house. Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Sarah Levinson, Julie Nagel, who else? Brian Higgins, Caitlin Albert, her boyfriend Tristan Morris, who came to pick her up. All those fucking people could have helped him, but they didn't, because he wasn't on the snow. And when he fell and he hit his head in their house, he didn't help him. They put him out like fucking trash on the front yard. Hank. Okay, back to this.
Decision. In her Lexus with the shattered taillight, debris field all over the front yard, and John O'Keefe lying helpless like a child in the front yard. She made a choice.
So weird.
She didn't call 911. She didn't run to his aid. She didn't knock on a door. She made a decision about herself. In her Lexus, she drove away.
He's such a dork.
She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die. She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die.
Just because you say it doesn't make it true, Hank.
We'll talk a little bit about the evidence as a whole. She was drunk. She was drinking that night. She was drinking McCarthy's with
He just said, before we talk about the evidence, let's talk about the evidence.
John. She was drinking at the waterfall.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm aggressive and I have a lot of anger when they're framing a woman for murder. I do have
Her blood was
I have
taken,
anger about
the
that. You're
samples,
right.
the retrograde analysis, almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit. She was drunk. She hit him. The timeline in this case is beyond dispute. You can accuse, assault, characterize, malign, twist. The timeline
Smooth like butter, Alan Jackson compared to this dork.
doesn't change. It is data. Data is data. The black box, the forensics from the SD card, we know exactly step by step where they were. We know in that window she hits him.
No, you don't.
Because he never moves again.
No, you don't.
His healthcare data. The temperature on the batteries of the cell phone. The physical evidence, the debris field, the DNA, the hair. And then she left him to die. He had a basal skull fracture. Count the coop, we heard all about it when the back of his head hits the ground and the brain comes forward. Dr. Wolf told us the reason why they have level 1 trauma centers around the country is because people can survive this injury if they get help. That's why they have this care. That's why they have these hospitals. But you gotta get help. You gotta get help. And if you don't, you develop symptoms, ecchymosis, raccoon eyes, your brain swells, and you die.
It would have been nice if they would have gotten him help.
She was drunk.
Say that a couple more times,
And
Hank.
that night was a recipe for disaster. But before we get to the drinking, in some ways, the fate of this night was sealed well before that night because John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were in a toxic relationship. This relationship was crumbling. We're here lovey-dovey, and it was crumbling, and we know it. And we know it because a month before, his niece clearly talks about when they went to Aruba. It should have been a wonderful event. It was discord.
Jeff Williams says, Hank is actually very smart and tactful. Really, Jeff? What the fuck was the sweatshirt stunt then? Was it attacked? At least you admitted it.
It was fighting. It was aggravation. And when they got back, the discontent was palpable. Miss Reed reaches out to Brian Higgins, text messaging. John O'Keefe, the relationship was crumbling. And you heard a little bit about what that relationship was like. Kaylee, his niece, told you. When there was an argument, John would do what John does. He would walk away. She described to you one time to get away.
Apparently, John would walk away from arguments when he was having an argument with Karen. But on the night that she killed him, he stood like a hitchhiker behind her car going 24 miles an hour and just stood there like a statue while she ran into him. That makes a ton of sense.
Away from the scene, he walked into his bedroom.
Holy.
But the defendant wouldn't let it go, pounding on his door, having to get the last word, never letting go of the fight. Kind of mirrors what happens on January 29th.
Had they fought? That's crazy.
And maybe outward appearance, they get along. Maybe sometimes quietly they get along. But behind closed doors, relationships have up and downs. We have a bird's eye view into the relationship on January 28, 2022 because we have the text messages. Not so lovey-dovey. The relationship is almost over. The tensions are simmering beneath the surface.
Jeff, sweatshirt had evidence on it, silly. Hey, Jeff, why did he insinuate that the holes on the back of the sweatshirt were caused from the crash? Explain that to me right fucking now. If he's so smart and tactful, why the fuck did he do that? And don't say it had evidence on it. Those holes were created by the crime lab. So what the fuck was that stunt, Jeff?
They are not getting along. She believes Mr. Keith's already halfway out of the relationship and he's not into it anymore. You will read him, you saw them. This relationship was unstable and at its end. And so fast
she
forward
hit
that
him?
night.
Okay.
That night, after this discord, after the arguing, they go out and what do? They drink. And they drink a lot.
Hey, has she been
So he
drinking?
drinks a lot, and Karen Reed drinks a lot. You've seen my coffee videos. You can call it 6, 7, 8, whatever you want to call it. You can see the shots into the mixed drinks. More shots into mixed drinks.
We don't have to
Confident
prove
yourself.
anything. Who
Over
cares?
half
She's
dozen
just drinking.
Mixed drinks in just a few hours. Shoulder. And then at the waterfall, a shot, a mixed drink. Now, it was brought up at the waterfall that there was some type of discord between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. They knew each other. They were friends. Brian Higgins' conduct of speaking to Karen Reed is not honorable. It's not. But they were friendly. There was no adversarial relationship. There was no anger between them. What we heard is they barely needed each other. Career slide.
Jeff said he miscalculated. What did he miscalculate, Jeff? This isn't a math problem. Not a math problem. They're holes in sweatshirts that were caused by the criminalist. So what did he miscalculate? He's either smart, tactful, or he can't calculate. What the fuck is it? Pick one.
One, please. At the waterfall bar, when John O'Keefe coming, here's him barely greeting him. That's him. Mr. Higgins. Barely greeting each other.
Yes,
Reality
barely
sometimes
greeting
is
each
different
other.
than arguing. This is a celebratory move. It's a celebratory move. A bunch of friends. They're playing around. They're hugging. They're grappling. This is a fighting technique for a murder 2 hours later. Is that the story? They're practicing their moves to murder John O'Keefe.
No. No, that's not the story,
With a
you
celebratory
rat
move,
fuck.
you don't see any aggravation or animus between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. Inevitably, the next morning, Karen Reed is brought to the hospital and they take her blood. Now, the government doesn't have to prove that she was drunk. It is either that she's over the legal limit, 0.08, or she had enough alcohol to affect her ability to operate a motor vehicle safely, but you will know that she was far beyond the legal limit. After the retrograde analysis, almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit. Almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit. Now, it's been intimated, not times that maybe she went home and started drinking after she got home. No evidence, mind you, no evidence.
There's
And
no
that's not
evidence
how
she
doctors
didn't.
decide her alcohol level. It's not appropriate for me to comment on the credibility.
But I'm going to comment.
So I won't do that. But Karen Reed will do that for her. So if we listen to slide 2, she'll tell you exactly what she.
Yeah. Now, this is where Karen Reed, she did all these fucking interviews, which was so stupid. But that's literally what Hank Brennan's closing argument is. If she didn't do the documentary, I don't know what his closing argument would be. He just plays a bunch of clips of her. And this is where she admits that she's drinking and she wouldn't have driven on the freeway. Like, why would you even say that? That's so stupid. That's why I kind of feel like they might convict her of DUI. The reason that they wouldn't, I think it would just be to shove it to the state and be like, fuck all the way off with your bullshit. But I mean, clearly she was drunk. I don't think that that's disputed. I think it's just, did she drink more when she got home? Commonwealth says there's no evidence of that. Correct. There's no evidence either way. They never asked her when she had her last drink. They don't have proof of when she had her last drink. So to extrapolate and guess is, a recipe for disaster. But yeah, no doubt she drank.
It takes probably about 5 or 6 or 4 drinks. Like they really have nobody's disparities in frozen alcohol. What's the biggest fun time? It tastes just like all soda water with lime.
Slide 3, please.
I would never have accessory. I would never have accessory to I mean, it's why the world was very crazy on the hills. And I was always going to write drinks and write the words for souls. And my alerts aren't shows they should be. I shouldn't try it.
Stupid thing to say.
When they leave the waterfall bar at 12:12, you see a video you have in evidence with a still photo of John O'Keefe holding a glass. Not from the owner's home. He didn't sneak into the house in the cupboard and grab a glass. From the waterfall, you see him with a glass.
I hate this gaslighting
Take a look at that picture. And now from 12 on.
They found the straw like 3 weeks later, by the way, and never tested it.
We virtually have a historian and the data that tells us exactly where he went, exactly step by step where he went. And how do we have that? Well, we know the defense car had a black box, and Judd Welcher, Dr. Judd Welcher, took the data from the black box and downloaded it so you can see the movements in the triggering events. And then Shannon Burgess, you know, like he says, don't attack the data, attack the man. You can be mocked for his LinkedIn profile or his updated CD. But what he did is he found a key, critical piece of this case that did not exist before. He found a reason.
Oh, Jeff, we can agree. Oh my God, Jeff Williams and I, a classic drinking and driving case. We agree. Give her a DUI. Please give her a DUI. 2 trials and millions of dollars, and you walk away with a DUI, I'm begging you. But I agree. A classic drinking and driving case. Jeff.
It was that SD card. The SD card that everybody missed. including the defense expert. Everybody missed it. So as much as you want to make fun of him, Shannon Welcher found the key.
Yeah,
to
Shannon
how the cameras
lied about his
and date
degree.
and location coordinated for an impenetrable timeline that can't be broken. That's
And by
what
the
Shannon
way,
Burgess did.
what Shannon Burgess found was not collision data. I mentioned it the other day. He got trigger data from key cycles, which is essentially what the mechanics use to like diagnose issues with the car. So they have triggering events like she reversed going fast, but they also have that her tires were fucking spinning. So who the fuck knows? But he's acting like they have data from the car that says there was a collision, and that is completely false. Completely false.
And so we know on the way from the waterfall to 34 Fairview, Ms. Reed is driving drunk. And so O'Keefe is in the passenger side of the car.
Point
and
at
they're
me one
heading
more
their way to
time,
34 Fairview, and they
motherfucker.
have us. And now we have more data because John O'Keefe has a cell phone. And I said at the beginning, it is a historian. It doesn't suffer from bias, it doesn't suffer from prejudice, it doesn't suffer from memory loss. It has data on it. And he puts it on
Yeah.
ways. High.
Yeah. All of a sudden, data on phones is accurate, except for when it comes to Jen McCabe. Then not on her phone. The Google searches, the butt dials, the deleted calls, the deleted text. No. That's she didn't talk to her sister at 5. That's not, even though that's what the data says, that not her data, just John's data. That's the data that you can trust that, but not Jen's.
Location data, as Ian With would say. And it tells you second by second the speed, the location, the movement. That's what it does. And he has healthcare data on that phone. The healthcare data separately shows his movement. And that is critical. It is critical because it not only shows his movement, it shows when he does not move. That healthcare data is critical. And it's not subject to bias. It's not in dispute. There's no other contrary evidence. It is data. On the way to 34 Fairview, alcohol fuels tension. We know that. And we know from those text messages the tension in that relationship. And then there's a trigger. There is a trigger on the way because they're lost. And when John O'Keefe calls Jen McCabe for directions, Jen McCabe said something that triggers what's going to happen next. Okay, slide 4, please.
Bella's mom has got it going on.
Jen's navigating John 2 hours when I was driving. She said it's near Ashley's house. Ashley and John hooked up prior to John and I dating.
Ashley's the hoe bag.
So they travel to 34 Fairview.
Ashley's Bella's mom, and the story is that Jen McCabe said, "Oh, it's near Bella's mom's house or near Ashley's house," and then that started this big fight that they got into, and that's why when Karen was leaving those voicemails, she thought John was cheating on her. Not that John was dying on a front lawn somewhere, but that he was cheating on her. That's what those voicemails that she was leaving him that night indicate. But if you're retarded like Jeff, you don't understand that.
Under the duress of this crumbling relationship, fueled by intoxication, we have triggers. Now, we know on their way there, we know from the data, where they went, how they moved. If we look at slide 5, Ian Whiffen showed you a guide, and it shows you with the healthcare data. The red shows his flight's time, it doesn't mean someone's flying upstairs. What it means is the elevation. And he breaks down the data, the red, the green, and the move down to the zone.
Keep in mind, their cell phone expert, that they're trying to insinuate that John's healthcare data has him going up and down flights and stairs on a completely flat road. And their cell phone expert did the test. And when the defense tried to ask him what the results of the test were, like, okay, you drove on this completely flat road. Did you go up and down flights of stairs? The Commonwealth objected and didn't let him answer. Like, bro, this is your witness. What do you mean? You don't want him to say that, no, it didn't register any flights of stairs because that's so fucking stupid.
And in the bottom left, that's 34 Fairview. You can see, second by second, the circles.
Jeff says, that's your side of the story. There's another side also. Yeah, Jeff, thanks for playing. I'm glad you're starting to come around to the whole reasonable doubt thing and what it means. Yeah, the fact that there's 2 stories and both of them are plausible means not guilty, my guy.
Of the 3-point turn on Cedar Crest. That's what you see. At that point, they've left the bar. Remember, the battery temperature was 82 degrees. They're now in a car. It's now 77 degrees. Think about how accurate the battery temperature is. That it reflects the difference between being in a bar and being in a car. They take a 3-point turn at Cedar Crest. And because of Shannon Burgess, and because of Jen Welcher, we have the data, and it's a triggering event. Remember, the acceleration past 30%, it registers data on the car, and that's exactly what happens. It's a 3-point turn.
Data.
And it all lines up with the cell phone after you synchronize times. It's that simple. It's nothing complicated. There's nothing tricky. There's nothing devious about it. It's data. They do the 3-point turn
data
to
now.
match the cell phone clock with the Lexus clock, and when you do, you can reconcile the
banging
difference.
on the table.
A lot of talk, a lot of arguments, a lot of fights. Shannon Burgess says 21 to 29 seconds. Mr. Disorder comes in. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to actually do anything. He wasn't given the invitation to test the data. He just looked at the report and made decisions, like a Monday morning quarterback. Looking at the data says,
This burden shifting motherfucker saying the defense's experts didn't actually test anything. Yeah, they don't have to. They don't fucking have to. That's not their job. Their job is to prove why your bullshit's wrong because you're the one that has the burden. I think Hank kind of got confused about what role he played in this trial. I think he maybe thought that he was the defense attorney, that he doesn't have the burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, I don't think he quite comprehends that burden that he has because he's used to defending the mob and like reasonable doubt is his thing.
seconds off or 2 seconds. Same window, same time. We have all the arguments we want. They're there. They're together. The data matches up perfectly. Perfectly. And so they make their way down to 34 Fairview Road. They don't stop. They don't stop at the driveway. They don't stop. And John O'Keefe gets out of the car. They go to the flagpole, and we know for two reasons. One, the data. And secondly, Mr. Nagel and Ms. Mason.
Unfortunately for Hank, that's not quite true because according to Normal Mom, Jennifer McCabe, she saw Karen's car move 3 times. It was in one spot, then it moved up a little bit more, and then it moved up near the flagpole. And every time when she was texting John to come in or park behind me, every time she would get up and she'd go look at the window and she would see Karen's car move up a little bit further. And eventually it was at the flagpole and then she saw that it was gone. So for this gaslighting motherfucker to say that she didn't stop anywhere else and pulled right up to the flagpole is bullshit. That's not what the evidence said. That's not what Jen McCabe testified to.
At Cedar Crest, at that intersection before they go down to the right, they meet, they let Karen Reed go first, they follow behind in the truck. Now, at this point, Mr. O'Keefe has about 8 more minutes before the beginning of the end of his life. And he's in that car. He's in that car for most of it. Because Ms. Mason and Mr. Nagel don't see anybody get out of the truck. Nobody crosses the lawn. Nobody goes to a garage. Not just because they didn't see it. They didn't. Not because they didn't see it. Because the healthcare data on the phone shows that John O'Keefe is not moving. The car is stopped at the flagpole. The healthcare data starts. The battery stays at 77 degrees.
It has him going up and down flights of stairs, you dumb fuck.
And they sit at that flagpole for minutes. It's 12, 24, 33.
It's not what Jen McCabe said.
12:30. Remember?
Not what Jen McCabe said.
They're about 5 minutes and then they go. It's not exact, but about 5 minutes they said. So there's about 2 minutes left for John O'Keefe. And what are they doing in those 2 minutes? What are the last 2 minutes of his life that he didn't that would be open to him? They're arguing. They're arguing. They're arguing. And we know they're arguing because Ms. Reed tells us through first responder Becker. She was sad. Remember he sees her in the back of the ambulance and he's trying to calm her down? She was sad because her last moments were arguing. They're in an argument. That's why they're not going in the house.
Her last words with him were psychotic voicemails that she left him because she was pissed. Not some fucking fake fight. Those voicemails. He's such a gaslighter. It's insane.
But John O'Keefe decides to get out of the car, and we know because the dome light goes on. That's what happens when you open a door. Whether he's bent down, he's standing outside, or on the other side, the dome light is on. And then you see the data. John O'Keefe.
Except there's a car behind them that literally pulls next to them at this very moment. And Karen Reed is sitting there with her hands on the wheel, the dome lights on, and there's nobody in the car and there's nobody on the fucking lawn. So where is he? Is he crouching down? Is he tying his shoe? What's he doing?
Begins to move. 12:31:56. It's the first time he has moved since they got to the flagpole, and it will be the last time he moves.
He's a liar. He's such a fucking liar. Oh my God, I hate him. Hate him, I hate him, I hate him.
He wouldn't say that the satellites, they move, they reconnect, they pull information. He's no longer on high frequency data because waves are shut off. Now it's more random, it's low frequency. We would never suggest that Mr. Whiffen did not claim based on location data alone. At that point, you can tell exactly what John O'Keefe is. What he said is it was leaves all night. The bullet is always in the flagpole.
Hey, Jeff. I don't think you quite understand the difference between the Commonwealth and the defense and the roles that they have. The Commonwealth's role is not to gaslight you into a guilty verdict. It's to tell the truth and prove your case. The defense's job is to poke holes and reasonable doubt. They've got 2 very different fucking roles here, Jeff, and you don't seem to understand that. So until you can comprehend that like basic function, I'm going to need you to shut the fuck up.
That doesn't mean he's always in the flagpole. He could have moved. He could have moved the circle, come back. Location data is consistent with him never leaving the flagpole. That in itself is not enough. But there's more. There is more. There is the healthcare data. There is the temperature of the cell phone battery. And so he moves for 20 seconds. It turns west. It does not say he walks to the house. That's not what the data says.
Yeah, that is what the data says.
And he walks over to the door. In fact,
stand in front of me like that.
Even when the defense testified, he measures from the driveway. He never stopped at the driveway. He never measures from the flagpole. He never measures from the flagpole to the garage door. So this fantasy that somehow he walked in the garage, even though there's no evidence, there's no witness, there's no data.
I hate this guy.
20 seconds of his life, and he moves. And healthcare data registers the steps. It could be pacing. It could be a straight line. It could be shaking the phone.
Could
We
be.
don't know.
Could be. Could be. Could be. Could be. That's his. Hey, I mean, he could have been doing this. Maybe. We don't actually know, but hey, find her guilty of murder because he could have been doing this.
No, we don't know everything. We don't know every little detail, every little second. We don't have to. That's not doubt. That's not reasonable doubt. We know for that 20 seconds he's moving, and in that 20-second window, when he moves, he has his phone. He looks down. 12:32:09. He sees a text message from his friend Ben King, and he looks at the text message, and he closes it.
His last moment on Earth is getting a text from that stupid cunt Jen. I'm sorry, John. Not only did you surround yourself with complete and utter morons as friends and family, your last act on this earth after you got attacked by a dog and hit in the face by Brian Higgins, allegedly, your last act on earth was to fucking read a text from Jen McCabe. Oh my God.
And then it happens. We know from the
Sucks.
uncontroverted data from that black box. We know that Karen Reed, after he gets out of the car, drives away. She drives for at least 33 feet away from him. He's back near the flagpole. She's gone. It's over. Whatever argument is over. Whatever anger and
So she would be like completely at the neighbor's house.
He's separate from her. He's safe. And then she makes a decision. That's what
Jeff said, don't use the C word as a woman. Cunt, 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 Jeff.
this case is about.
Cunt.
Then she makes a decision. She could have driven home.
Standing in front of me like that, I would have lost my shit.
They could have talked about it the next day.
I would have kicked him in the
Like knocking on the
shins.
door, like Kaylee said, getting the last word. She doesn't drive away. She takes that 6,000-pound Lexus, and she makes the decision. And the decision is that she steps on the gas after banging it into reverse.
Yeah. Totally.
Before
That's
we talk about
exactly
what
what
happens next,
happened.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the charges in this case.
Okay, we're
I think
fast forwarding
it's
through
important
this
to really
because
understand what
we
we're
don't need
talking
to
about
hear him talk
I
about
have
the
no authority.
charges.
That she drove 33 feet at least, because it only picks up a 10-second window. And when it starts to pick up the data, we know she's driving at a speed. So it's more than 33 feet. We just don't know. And then when she
We
comes
just
back,
don't know.
33 feet and 50 more.
We just don't know,
80
he
feet.
says.
80 feet. Over 80 feet. Now, nobody has ever suggested even
This fucking guy whose job it is to prove what happened is repeatedly saying over and over again that he doesn't know. But just trust him. The data. They've got the data. The data. The data. Lying fuck.
Dr. Welcher when she collided with him. This data doesn't tell you collision. It's a 6,000-pound Lexus. It's a 216-pound man. It's not going to show a blip. It could have been in that 10-second window. It could have been 2 seconds after. It could have
Could have
been
been.
4 seconds after.
Could
But
have
it's in
been.
that pocket of time, and we know it.
Fully.
Because
We know
saw
it.
the data with the phone.
Yeah.
That 20 seconds is the
Yeah.
same window of that 10-second window coming back. So even if it's a couple seconds later, 4 seconds later, whatever the sort of
Yeah,
wants,
whatever.
it stops moving.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Don't keep
It doesn't matter. Like, this is the thing. You proved that she went in reverse and that at some point John's phone stopped moving. Those are the two things that you did prove. So congratulations on that. What you missed, though, was the whole, like, being hit with a car thing. That was, like, a big part of it that you had to prove. But, I mean, like, it could have been. I don't know. Could have been. Imagine being put in jail for life over it could have been. Jeff says, this is why you only have 10 people watching. Jeff, there's 460 people watching right now, but I appreciate you. 450 on my X account and 10 people on the TDC podcast YouTube page. So shove it up your ass, dickhead. Back to this.
That's moving. Correct. Go slide 6, please. You'll get to see this more closely. You can't probably see it where you're sitting, but there's important data.
Oh,
Data
yeah.
doesn't lie. And you will see
Could be.
acceleration, 75%. You will see speed, 24 miles per hour backwards. You will see distance, over 80 feet. That's what you're going to see in this data on that night. Anger, although not necessary.
She's
in any of these charges,
apparently
anger
a
can be inferred
NASCAR
for
driver.
Somebody to come back that hard, that fast, that reckless, that obvious, likely to create a plain and storm likelihood of death. That data tells a story that can't be changed. Can't be tapped. Arthur? They do some fast on me. You know what else they do? Texting data. There's nothing about that data that is uncertain. Nothing.
Again, with the burden shifting. Again with the fucking burden shifting. They don't have to hire ARCA to talk about the text stream data, you stupid bitch. They hired ARCA to prove how fucking dumb your expert is.
Say that down, please. When Ms. Reed hits John O'Keefe, collides with John O'Keefe. We don't know if he went in the air foot. We don't know if it was how much of a clip it was.
We don't know.
Back, but we know.
We don't know.
Because pretend it's all over the yard. It's all over the yard. And when he falls back, and he hits the...
His proof of the collision is that there's taillight in the yard. First of all, how'd it get in the fucking yard? Wasn't he hitting the street? So how'd it get in the yard? Okay. And 2, they didn't find any taillight until after her car was in their possession. Hank. So for you to say, well, he could have done this, he could have done that, but we know there was a collision because there was taillight. The gaslighting is insane.
Back of his head, his basal fracture. He's then lying there helpless. When Miss Reed leaves, she leaves behind tons of her taillight. All over the yard. All over the called debris field. And you've seen videos. You can't replicate the exact contact. You can't because you need where the person was hit, how fast the person was going, but you know what happened because you look at the debris field when a light is broken, it's no different than on the front yard. It's no different. She leaves him behind. She leaves her taillight behind.
It is different. It is different, Hank, because the diffuser on Karen's car was broken and none of the tests, not even 30 miles an hour, broke the diffuser in the testing. But yeah, it totally got there naturally. Yep. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
On the way home, you know she's still angry.
Oh yeah,
She's still angry because she starts leaving home voicemails.
Yeah.
Slide 7, please. Healthcare facts 1231.56, 1232.04, 1232.12 is the data which is adjusted and reconciled across the lexis.
Yeah.
1232.09 is when
Notice how he says they match when you reconcile the times. So you got to move them around to make a match. But once you do that, then they match. Once you adjust the times that don't match, once you adjust them so that they do match, then they match. You see? So she totally hit him because once you adjust the clocks, then they match.
he closes phone and looking at the page text, 1232.16 is his last steps. Because the source says that red range, move a little bit, 2 or 3 seconds, they can move it 4 seconds, 5 seconds, it doesn't matter. It's
Doesn't
all in
matter.
the same window.
Yeah, it's fine. Who cares?
You have slide 10, please.
How many times has this rat fuck said, I don't know, could have happened, maybe, in his closing argument? That's why I said, does he know that he's the prosecutor? Does he know that that's his fucking role in this?
Each one of those pins represents 10 feet.
Yeah.
You can't place that car where it was in front of Fairview. You just can't. The data doesn't tell you that, but that tells you the movements of that car. Now, as John O'Keefe sadly lays on the ground, abandoned, you're going to have to ask yourself a question for charges of previously knowing somebody was injured and then died. You're going to have to ask yourself, is there evidence that Ms. Lee knew that she'd hit him? Don't need to prove it for murder, too. Don't need to prove it for OUI manslaughter. But for the third charge, Carmel has to prove the unreasonable doubt she knew she hit him. We weren't there. There's an eyewitness. There was a guy. And that eyewitness tells us that she knew. And that eyewitness is Karen herself.
Point at me again, bitch.
That she knew. We have slide 8, please.
Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?
Oh, yeah.
That could have been. It was Holly Wind. I got mutual blessing of the stereo. And did he somehow try to grab me down, which was the emotion? I was holding to God. I was like, slowly pulling my head. Did he come up and maybe trip or bang me with his cell phone and I barely was foot and he passed out drunk? I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but I clipped him.
That's the fucking clip he played. Her like trying to figure out what happened. That's the clip he played as evidence.
When she left Fairview and left John behind, she didn't think he was mortally wounded. But she knew she hit him. She knew she hit him.
She said that in the
And so
morning.
she made a debris field all over the front lawn. And she took evidence with her too.
Oh yeah.
Hair, DNA on the tail, and she drove.
Where'd the hair come from? Hey Jeff, where'd the hair come from? Because he was wearing a hat and a long sleeve shirt. So where the fuck did the hair come from?
Back to John's house, and she started calling on the way back. 12:33, just a minute and a half later. And then her messages show her anger. You see, this was John's fault. This was John's fault.
Yeah,
And
she
her
thought
phone
he was
calls
cheating
tell
on
you
her.
about the tone and the destruction of that relationship. 53 phone calls that night. 53 phone calls. Not
Question for all the Jeffs out there. If you killed your significant other, would you call him 53 times that night and leave them angry voicemails? Who the fuck does that? Who the fuck does that? If they know that they hit someone, why the fuck would they call them 53 times and leave voicemails accusing him of being out cheating? Oh, the hat fell off after he was hit. Oh, I see. Oh, hair in the bumper. The hat fell off. And so the hair flew from his head to her car because the hat was next to his body. And you didn't say his head was hit by the car. So how'd the hair get on the car, Jeff? Oh, right. Yeah, that's what I
one
thought.
to 911. Not one to Jen McKay, please go outside and try to help. Not one to a hospital. Not one to anybody but him.
Why would she do that if she thought he was out cheating?
Slide 12, please. Can you play voicemail, please? The calls keep coming. Cell phone temperature 72 degrees. He's been outside now, not moving, on that cold hard ground with his cell phone under him. The warmth of his body.
The cell phone is 72 degrees sitting on the ground, on the frozen ground. That's what he wants you to believe.
The cold ground, 72 degrees. They tell you the story. As this temperature plummets and that cell phone battery is compromised, so is John O'Keefe. And him and his cell phone alone on that yard. 66 degrees, 12:45. It is plummeting. Ian Wickens taking a phone and putting it in a freezer. Not saying.
Jeff, how did the hair get there? Don't tell me it was frozen to the vehicle. How the fuck did it get there? How the fuck did it get there?
The idea that means that John O'Keefe in the house, absurd. 66 turns to 61 is 12:53. 48 unanswered calls from the defendant. He's not in a party. He's not wrestling with Brian Higgins. He's not in a fight. If he's in a fight, his cell phone would be moving. There'll be healthcare data. There'll be steps. If he got into the house in 20 seconds, and his cell phone is found under his body the next day, then how would he get back outside? There would be more steps because his phone is working. The data is the data. There's nothing wrong with it. It's registering everything. The temperature, the movement. He doesn't go in any house. He can't go in any house. His phone never moves again. Voice note number 2, please. Listen to this.
John, I'm doing this fucking kid. Nobody knows what fucking pervert.
She calls him a fucking pervert. She said, no one knows where you are. You're a fucking pervert. Yeah, okay. That's the voice of somebody who just killed you.
It is
Okay.
12:59. John O'Keefe has been on that line for about 27 minutes. She hasn't called anybody else, hasn't spoken, has no information. Nobody's called her. You'll see her phone records. And she says, nobody knows where you are.
Yeah. She doesn't know, and the niece doesn't know. That's nobody, Hank. Maybe his hat fell off and he had no hat and was hit. Jeff, you just said the word maybe. Do you understand? Jeff, do you need me to dumb it down for you a little bit more? You just said maybe, hun. Maybe his hat fell off? Oh, okay. That's not guilty then.
She knows. She knows. Nobody does know where he is. Except her. Except her. Why is she asking nobody knows who you are? She is starting to get panicked. Because she knows she hit him. Not suggesting she meant to kill him. Or for him to die. But she knows she hit him. And now he's not responding. But she's getting nervous. And she's getting anxious. And she's getting call after call after call. He's not answering. He's not calling back. He's not even picking up the phone. And we know what's happening at this point. Panic, drunken denial, it's setting in. And so then we see the healthcare data from this phone. She doesn't move after 1 o'clock. She could be sitting, she could be falling asleep, but she doesn't move for a while.
Yeah, imagine that. She fell
But
asleep.
she wakes up. She wakes up. Oh, the next minute. Take that down, please. And when she wakes up, she doesn't call Jen McCabe and say, where's John? She doesn't call
Yeah, she does.
Brian Higgins. That's his number. He's been texting me. Hey, was John in a party with you? Did you see John tonight?
Why the fuck would she text Big Neck Daddy
afraid.
Higgins?
So she
Fuck
wakes
that
up Katie,
guy.
that young girl behind. And she says, she's panicked, she can't say what she's saying. Call Jen McCabe. Call Jen McCabe. Why is she calling Jen McCabe? She calls Jen McCabe. You know what she doesn't say when she calls Jen McCabe?
This gaslighting motherfucker just said to you, she didn't call Jen McCabe and then says, woke up the niece and called Jen McCabe. Why would she call Jen McCabe? Which fucking one is it? Should she have called Jen McCabe or no?
When did he leave the house? What happened last night? No. She calls and says, I left him at the waterfall. I left him at the waterfall. She now has gone from
she's
to self-preservation. I left him at the waterfall, and Jen says, "Welcome to the waterfall." He saw him in front of the house.
Hang on. Hang the fuck on. He is such a lying motherfucker. Jennifer McCabe said that she didn't remember seeing them originally when Karen first called her. She did not remember seeing them outside of 34 Fairview. Matt McCabe, her husband, reminded her of that after she talked to Karen. And then the next time she talked to Karen, she said, no, you left the waterfall and we saw you at 34 Fairview. So he is such a lying motherfucker to say that, because Jennifer McCabe did not. Ugh. He's such a fucker.
Hangs up. So then she calls someone that she doesn't know very well. She calls Terry Roberts. But now she has to pivot, because someone's seen her in the exact spot that John will be found soon. Whether she's the first one there or somebody else, John will be found. Maybe Lucky missed him. It's a snowstorm. You can't see. But someone's going to find him at some point. So she calls Terry Roberts. There's no one she left at the waterfall. She pivots. And she calls, Terry. John's dead. I think he got hit by a plow. Why do you think she chose those words? Why did she choose those words? Because she knew that there was a collision with a large motor vehicle, and she had to substitute her 6,000-pound Lexus for another big vehicle. I think he got hit by a plow.
This gaslighting motherfucker, I hate him so much. I really hate him so much. This is his whole closing argument. Just a bunch of guesses and conjectures, like what Jeff's doing right now. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that. Hey, have you proved your case at all? All you proved was that she pushed her pedal down 75%. Okay, cool.
And so now we have the introduction of John McCabe and Terry Roberts. Phone calls that they probably never, ever wanted. A worst nightmare to get a call like that. For what's going to happen, what they're going to see, what they'll never be able to forget. But because the defendant is John O'Keefe's girlfriend, they wake up in the middle of the night.
Oh,
in a blizzard.
that's so selfless.
Out of their kindness, their loyalty, their devotion to John O'Keefe. And when she calls them and tells them that she wants them to come out, this soccer mom with a perfectly normal life, gets drawn into this whole farce, and she answers that call. She gets out of bed. The spirit.
Hey, Jen, you're a cunt, bitch. You're a cunt, bitch. And like literally everyone on the fucking planet hates you, Jen McCabe. I hope you know that everyone on the planet, except for maybe Jeff, hates you. Like, whenever you're seen for the rest of your life in public, people are going to point and they're going to laugh at you. And they're going to say, that's that bitch that framed someone for murder. And she Googled how long to die in the cold at 2:27. And she called her sister and lied about it, where John's body was found. And she lied to the feds. Forever, Jen McCabe, your name is synonymous with a cunt. So just like FYI, nobody likes you. Literally nobody.
The kindness she displays to put herself in that position because someone asked for help, because that's what good people do. Terry Roberts didn't know Jen McCabe. They both knew John and met each other 1 years before. Terry Roberts separately at that time answers the call, gets out of bed, drives to go help.
Oh my God. After she calls her sister.
John O'Keefe. And so you hear and see at 5:07, the defendant leaves Meadows. She leaves. Okay.
Hey, Hank, what else happens at 5:07? Jen is about to sue the absolute shit out of Turtle Boy, and Hank Brennan is helping her. Hey, Laura, fuck you, you bitch. Fuck you. You're a bitch just like Jen McCabe. Jen McCabe's not going to sue anybody because she's a lying bitch that helped cover up a murder. And we believe that. We literally all believe that. Because of her actions, BTW, Jen McCabe has no one to blame but herself. Nobody. She's the one that did all that. And she's mad that we found out. Sue me, bitch. You, Jen McCabe, are the one that called your sister at 5:07 in the morning and lied about it. You, Jen McCabe, are the one that lied to the feds who were supposedly just investigating your bestie's murder. And you lied to the feds. Okay, that's a choice.
Is behind Wayne.
Just
You
a
see her
soccer
back
mom.
up, and John Walter showed you all of those demonstrations where you can see the unsettled snow in the back. After the bump, you can see the pieces missing. No taillight. There's no taillight on the ground, all the white snow. There's no crack, there's no brake. It's a nudge. It's a nudge. But the tail light has already been broken because when you look at the video, not one little piece, it's still framed, little angle with the light, the razor, you take a look, you have to slow it down. You'll see the exact same piece is missing.
Sure.
Because it's back to Fairview. That's why it's missing. It's
Right.
not there, it's back to Fairview.
Yeah.
And then she leaves at 5:07. She gets to Jen McCabe's about 5:35, 28 minutes. It's about a 10-minute ride. Where did she go?
Laura Lee Smith said Karen is going to prison tomorrow. Hey, Laura, I cannot wait for that to not fucking happen. And I am going to come back to you and ask you how fucking sad you are. And I hope that your bitch ass is just miserable. I hope you're miserable, Laura, which you will be. With Jen being cunts together. That's what you're going to do when Karen is found not guilty. That's what you're going to do, Laura. Bitch.
28 minutes. Where did she go? We don't know. We don't have data for that. But we know when she gets to Jen McCabe's house, she is panicked, frantic, over my screaming, waking everybody up. Jen McCabe comes down. Can't understand her. Going out to the car to try to console her. Why is she so frantic? Why can't she speak? Why can't she say a word? Because John went out and drinking fell asleep on the couch? Because Dawn would maybe be cheating on her? What is
Because he didn't come home. That's why, Hank. Because she was fucking scared because he didn't come home. Laura, you're so miserable right now. Hey, Laura, suck a
in this
dick.
extraordinary duress? Did she stop somewhere in the way hard? Did she just see death? Carrie Robbins, take charge kind of person. She pulls him behind, she sees the broken tail light in Jen McCabe's driveway, and she decides she's going to call me get this. We're going to go back to Meadows, you're going to follow me, leave the car, I'll drive. At this point, Jen and Carrie don't know each other. They've only met once. And they go back to Meadows, they obviously don't find John because he's back at 34 Fairview. And then they start their way towards 34 Fairview. They start driving towards 34 Fairview, and they're looking, and you heard from Carrie Roberts, Jen McCabe, they're looking out the window, they can't see anything. The snow, the blizzard, the weather, the darkness, they can't see anything. And they're driving, and they decide to go back to 34 Fairview, and this is remarkable. This is remarkable. When they start their way past towards 34
Love you,
Fairview,
Laura.
they get close. And when they get close, they can see nothing. But the defendant screams, "Stop! Let me out!" And they look around and they say, "What?
Oh
Let
my
me out!
God,
Let
this
me
is
out!"
so fucking
She doesn't want to see
boring.
John O'Keefe. She knows where he is. She knows exactly where he is. She knows where to find him. She knows where to expect to find him because she knows where she left him.
I'm sorry, this is so
That happens on her. Things move. The glass comes with him. Lands in his body. The refill moves past him. Shoe, hat, straw.
Yeah, everywhere.
Jen McCabe makes a call to her sister, and they say because it registers 29 seconds, a cell record is not the same as a call detail record. There's no evidence, it was a conversation, no lights
No,
on, there's no conspiracy.
there's no.
You can call
You know
them,
what,
can
you guys just don't trust the data when it comes to Jen McCabe's phone. Only John's. That's the only data you can trust. Silly gooses.
go to voicemail. They have no evidence, none, that there was a
None.
conversation between Jen McCabe, the person who was ripped out of her sleeve to come help, and her sister for some grand conspiracy. And so what happens next is dramatic. Kelly Roberts and Jen McCabe see their best friend prone, lifeless, frozen, on the ground. And they're living this torment because someone brought them into this. When their friends hug John, there's not one suggestion from anybody that John ever went into that house. There's no reason to go into that house because John was never in the house. Not one time does anybody say, "What time did he leave? I thought he went in there." Not even a whisper. Because it
so
never,
boring.
Ever happened. And when 911 comes, we have first responders. These people are heroes. Some of them, you heard from some of them, they were born to help people. That's what their life is about. Okay? I know it doesn't fit the theme, the theory, the story, but she tells you herself. She endorses those good people exactly what they had heard. She tells you herself. She hit it. It's undeniable, it's unmistakable, it's inconvenient. But the truth has a way of seeping up to the daylight. It can be oppressed and suppressed and pushed down and covered and twisted, but it rises. It rises. And it is not a coincidence. There's no coincidence that Mr. Meadow and Ms. McLaughlin hear exactly that.
Okay, now we talk
Well,
about
we
the
have to
cell
have it.
phone battery temperature. Because
And I
again,
told you, this organization
data,
is-
unless
this
it's
is
Jen
public
McCabe's
information.
data.
That's not a click and swipe like the Dr. Wolf Harker knows how to do. This can't be erased. But they still hold on to this. Because they argue to you and all the injustices that have been done. They tell you, they want you to believe. They take a flyer on the fact that she looked up how long to die in the cold at 227. It is an absolute contrary to science. There's no basis to support it. They stand here in front of you. Why? Because every time they say something like that, you look the other way.
He just said there's no data to support that Jen McCabe Googled how long to die in the cold at 227, except for the fact that it showed up on a Celebrate report and showed as deleted. But okay. Also, the look the other way thing, that was Alan Jackson's whole theme in the trial number 1. For Hank Brennan to now turn and pivot to use look the other way, is so motherfucking embarrassing. He wants to be Alan Jackson so bad. So bad.
Look the other way. 227. Look the other way. I don't know what she did. Former Trooper Proctor. Look the other way. Don't look at her.
So embarrassing. Oh my
Every time
God.
they make those out, oh, she got the glass inside the others. Maybe in the basement. Look the other way. Don't look the other way. Look at the facts. Look at the data. And all these
can't. I
There's no
can't.
But these are one person, the defendant. And it's not just the data and facts. It's her herself. Let's talk about Mr. Proctor. You were invoked
Mr. Proctor.
emotion early in the opening that this is a cancer. That's a tough word. I don't evoke that time.
True.
I'm saying you should be trusted by the text messages. You should. They're not defensible. I don't stand on defending propriety. I don't. But that doesn't change the physical evidence, the scientific evidence, and the data. He was terminated. He paid a penalty. He was held responsible for what he did. He should have been. He should have been. But that doesn't necessarily help. That doesn't change the facts. It doesn't change physical evidence. It doesn't change the science. It's distasteful.
It does
It's
change it,
dishonorable.
though. It does
Remember,
change the evidence, Hank.
Trooper Detective was asked, was the investigation honor and integrity? And he said it was. Was Trooper Proctor's effort honor and integrity? And he said it was integrity. But he never said honor. That's a man of honor. Military service, dedicated to his country.
Breaking news. None of the motherfuckers who worked this investigation have honor. Not this rat fuck, not Trooper Proctor, not Trooper Buchanan, not Jeff Williams, not Laura Lee Smith. None of these motherfuckers have honor. None of them.
I was full clearances to the President of the United States, now a state trooper. He would not say that Trooper Proctor was honorable. Because he wasn't. He wasn't. But it does not. It doesn't create a conspiracy. It doesn't invent a dog. It doesn't make somebody
Invent
else
a
something
dog?
It just doesn't.
Invent a
When you read
dog.
those text messages, they're hard to look at. It's unfair. It's unfair. And if there's a penalty more than being fired, well, maybe that penalty would be deserved. But it has nothing to do with the justice in this case.
Yeah, it's called not
There's
guilty.
Not one piece of evidence, not one, that we can look at and say, this was tampered with. This was planted. This was distorted. Remember when we introduced the taillights at the beginning?
Hey, Hank, the glass on her bumper would like a chat.
Which did the taillights, but then the defense did, so I put them in. Those were taillights that were only found by Trooper Proctor. I did not.
Hank Brennan just said, I didn't even introduce the pieces Michael Proctor found of the tail light. The defense did. I wasn't even going to introduce them because Michael Proctor found them by himself. So what are you saying, Hank? You saying you can't trust stuff that's only found by Michael Proctor? Because I got news for you. He touched every single piece of evidence in this case. So if you weren't going to introduce the tail light because it was found by Proctor, but the defense did, so they forced your hand, what does that say that you're saying about the quality of the evidence found only by Michael Proctor? It means you don't trust it. But you want the jury to trust it and send this woman away for the rest of her life. Okay, cool.
Not put that evidence in. Understanding those text messages and appreciating the disdain one might have for his comments. Not that there's any evidence of tampering, not that there's any evidence that it was not true, but I didn't put that evidence before you because we didn't need Trooper Proctor in this case. We don't need Trooper Proctor to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's why I didn't introduce that evidence here.
You need something.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about planting of taillight. We know the taillight wasn't planted because Trooper Buchanan and Mr. Proctor did not go down to Dighton to see Miss Reed until later in the afternoon. We know from the 507 video, we've seen that. We know the taillight was already missing when she was in the driveway.
No.
When the good Canton police detectives went to do a wellness check to care for those young children, and they went to the house, apparently they didn't even know it. The dash cam tell us. It starts a year ago.
Boring.
Claws, teeth, and then it's claws, then it's teeth, and then it's I don't know. And then you look at each of the different parts of the abrasions. She says, well, I can't tell.
Just
She didn't see any
gaslighting on
roll- She
gaslighting.
didn't see any road-starting injuries, which are very common in car collisions. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen because she in 9 days saw a fraction of the information. A fraction. And we know now, argument back and forth for days about low body injuries. Communicate about the case. Never used it before, it hasn't used it since.
I hate this guy. He's so fucking
Okay, they said,
boring.
no. And at the end of the examination, he was defense, yes.
All
And he
right.
had a brief window of life left. When he got out, and she drove away, she couldn't let it go. She got drunk, she hit him, she left him to die. It's that simple. We
Just
don't know
trust
exactly how
him.
this collision happened, but we have a good idea from the physical evidence.
Did you just hear that? Hang on, let me rewind. Listen carefully to what this Joker just said. As he's got like 4 minutes left in his closing argument. And this is what the prosecutor, who has to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, says about the evidence.
And she drove away, she couldn't let it go. She got drunk, she hit him, she left him to die. It's that simple. We don't know exactly how this collision happened, but we have a good idea from the physical
We don't know how this accident happened. We don't know, but we've got a good idea. Okay, Hank, my guy, good idea is actually not good enough for guilty. But hey, I mean, at least you tried.
evidence, and we know that it happened. Can someone have a collision without lower body injuries? Red flag 19, please. You bet they can.
This is funny too. So this is the ARCA test. This is one of the tests ARCA did, and Hank's trying to use this, and people like Jeff and Laura show this and as like some kind of serve, like, oh yeah, see, you can get hit by a car and break the taillight, not have any lower body injuries. Keep your eyes on the foot of this dummy, okay? Keep your eye on the foot and tell me if he doesn't get any lower extremities, which would be the feet, injuries from what this is about to show you.
We don't know if this is the body condition. We don't know if this is the last week.
We don't know.
This is Bible.
Watch.
Look at the reveal. Look at his turn. Remember his sneaker on that curve? Like
Watch.
against
Look.
The showpiece then falls back.
Look.
Hits his head. Counter coup. Left to die.
A 6,000-pound car just ran over that dummy's foot, and Hank just tried to say there was no evidence of lower extremity injuries. Oh my God, he's so retarded. Why are you all so retarded?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt what happened that night. There is no doubt who did it.
Sounds like
It was
there's a
very difficult
doubt,
to ask
Hank.
anybody to consider the evidence and consider the law. Very difficult. There were 3 charges. There was second-degree murder. Miss Reed, when she chose to drive back at Mr. O'Keefe in that night with a 6,000-pound Lexus, in that anger, 75%, whether she meant to hit him or not, didn't mean to kill him, she hit him. Straight, it is a plain and strong likelihood of death. You would never get back down your driveway if your kids were at the end of the driveway. You think you're going to kill somebody? You would never do it because you would expect, if you drove at them at that speed, that someone would die. That's second-degree murder. Oh,
Why would you think that?
She doesn't even know she hit him. She doesn't even have to know she hit him.
Yeah, Jeff, it's funny.
She did.
It's
She did.
fucking
And she left a
funny.
man
Hilarious.
And generous and thoughtful. She left him alone. She left him alone to die. Could I have slide 92, please? He is not an it. John O'Keefe is not a buddy.
John is looking down right now at Laura Lee Smith, Jeff Williams, Jed McCabe, his dumbass fucking family, and saying, how are you all so retarded? How are you all so retarded that you saw my injuries and you thought a fucking car did this to me? You are all the stupidest people to ever walk the face of the planet. That's what John thinks about all of you. There's no doubt in my mind that he thinks that about you, that you're retarded. And I agree.
John O'Keefe is not a buffalo on a prairie. John O'Keefe is a person. And he was murdered by Karen Reed.
All right, jury's on.
All right. That was that. That was that. Oh, Laura says, we love you, Johnny. Johnny hates you, Laura. Johnny hates you. He thinks you're really stupid. Laura. He thinks you're dumb. You are free from the biggest bitch in history. Laura, you're the biggest bitch in history. How about that? So, anyways, we've been going for 2 hours and 40 minutes again. Went through Alan Jackson's closing argument and Ratfuck Hank's closing argument. My thought is they after they read Exhibit 209. Yes, Laura, R.I.P. John. You're right. John, I'm so sorry that your friends murdered you. I'm sorry about that, and that your friends and family are retarded. But R.I.P. John. After they read Exhibit 209, they were probably like, okay, yeah, let's just all go home and sleep on this. We'll come back Monday and we'll acquit her of everything. Like I said, the only thing I could see, I mean, there's no way 12 people are going to agree that Karen hit John with her car. That's just not going to happen. So the choices are a hung jury again, not guilty, or they might be able to get her on a DUI, which would be fucking so funny. So funny. Laura Lee Smith says my channel sucks. Oh, Laura. Don't go, Laura. Bye. You are very dumb, she says. Oh, come back. We were having so much fun, Laura. Don't go. After all, she said, hey, I'd rather be a cunt than a pussy like you. Good one, Laura. You really got me there. Anyways, that's that. Thanks for hanging out. There's 521 of you right now, which is pretty cool. Thanks for listening. And yeah, we'll see. We'll if there's a verdict tomorrow, maybe we'll go live just so I can talk shit to Laura and Jeff. Laura and Jeff, please, for the love of God, come back here when there's a verdict. I'm begging you. I'm actually begging you, and I'll send you a link to come on with me just so I can laugh in your stupid ass face. I can't wait. I genuinely cannot wait. Oh, Laura says for sure you're a pussy. Okay, Laura. Okay. You're retarded. She says I'm a coward. Well, you're stupid. So there's that. Okay. Well, I'll see y'all later. Free Karen Reed, motherfuckers.